Welcome back to another episode of Collector's Quest. I'm Tyler, here with Johnny. Johnny, I think
Tyler.
This might be the first episode for a bunch of listeners.
I hope it is, because it's designed for the new people. It's designed for people who don't know what's going on, or maybe just need some guidance.
Or you've been collecting video games for 13 years, and you're like, you know what, maybe I should listen to the episode for new collectors, just in case there's like something I didn't pick up over the 13 years that a new person might need to know. Because I do that all the time, and it always ends up being like basic stuff or stuff that I've already learned, but I like listening to those anyway.
I do the same thing. Like, you just overthink about it. You're like, well, I could have missed something. You just assume that you're fallible, and maybe along the path of doing it forever that you just missed a really basic step.
You know, we don't have this in our show notes, Johnny. Should we introduce ourselves again? Is this like can we reintroduce ourselves after 5 years of me being on this show?
Sure, yeah. Let's introduce ourselves.
Hey, listeners. I'm Tyler. I've been collecting since Nintendo created the Virtual Console and started selling NES games for $5. Back when NES games were largely $1 to $2, I bought as many $1 NES cartridges to stick it to the man, and I've never stopped. Actually, I stopped in around 2012, and I got really into pinball for about 4 years. But now I'm back, and better than ever, and I got onto the podcast that I listened to, and now I'm one of the hosts here. You too can achieve your dreams if you just ask Johnny if you want to be on the show. One day, you could replace me.
No. It's more likely you'll replace me than you replace Tyler.
That's my introduction, Johnny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, who are you, Johnny?
Okay, well, I'm Johnny, the longest tenured host of this show, thus far, anyways. I've been collecting since around 2004. I used to think it was a little later than that until one day I found my first list. That's what I'm known for. I'm a notorious list maker. I love to make a list. And, I started this going back. I was like, you know what? I'm going to collect all those games I beat as a kid, because I used to be very dedicated to beating video games, trading my games away as quickly as possible to find the next game. I was like, man, wouldn't it be awesome to have just a stack of those games that I beat over time? And all that nostalgia happened, and I got here like most people do, like you probably did. You have some nostalgia for some old games that you used to love. And, then spiraled out of control. And now Tyler and I both have over 10,000 games. And now it's like going to be year 20 of me doing this. And here we are, large video game collectors and a podcast. This podcast also, we're just past the anniversary, but this is like 8 years of the podcast, or 7 years? I don't know, Tyler. It's like 7 or 8 years. You've been on for like 6.
It's a long-running podcast. Some might say the second longest-running video game collecting-focused podcast there is.
Well, I mean, is there another one anymore?
The RF Generation Collector Cast, I think, has this beat, and they still do put out occasional episodes.
Okay. Yeah, but we have hundreds of episodes on a variety of weird topics. I don't recommend you listen to anything below episode 70. Like, if you had to start, I would say start past episode 70, and this is not chronological order, though. This is find a topic you like and pick it. Ignore all the episode numbers, pretty much. Find a topic you enjoy, and that's the episode you should listen to.
Johnny, you said something crazy. You said that we both have over 10,000 video games, which is perhaps, one, not a metric of how good of a collector someone is, and two, maybe a failure in yes. collecting, because I think curated collections and definitely quality over quantity is probably the mark of a better collector. And as we go into the future, probably more so. So definitely don't listen to us because of that. But I would call, if I was to categorize both me and Johnny, we are firmly in the camp of hoarder collectors. We both like collecting full sets of things. We both like collecting like 90% garbage and then 10% good stuff, because as the 100%, it feels like it's a whole thing, even though 90% of it is garbage. Even though we collect like this, we would both probably say do not collect like this.
100%. I think another failure of Tyler and I is that and this is something you should be able to do, and let me impart this to you now. separate what you want from what you find to be interesting. They don't have to be the same thing. Because Tyler and I will be like, oh, let's research and think about something. And then we're like, that is cool. Just because something is cool or you found it interesting does not mean you need to put it on the shelf. You don't need to do that. You can just be like, that's cool, write it down, make a note, and think that's cool, and then just move on with your life. Tyler and I are like, I would like to now physically touch that thing, own it, and waste our money on it. Which is part of our problem.
I do the that's cool thing with modern games because,
yes,
I mean, you can't have everything. So I look at like modern collector's editions or like the weird rare variants that people find in modern stuff. And like, I know I'm really not focused on modern games. And by modern, I mean like past the 2000s. Just because I can't buy everything, Johnny. So when I am trying to buy everything, I'm trying to buy everything over here in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Which is more than enough for any one man.
Yes, we've already exceeded the enough for one person, 5 people, or 10 people phase of our existence.
So, Johnny, let's get into our show notes. Now that people know who we are, we're a bunch of weird hoarders who have had a podcast for way too long.
We also have a bunch of full sets. We also like to research. We also are weirdly passionate about games and learning about games, which is why we're both on a podcast about this.
We're the coolest.
I don't know if that's our metric. I don't know if coolest is the thing, but if you are like nerdy about games and want to like beyond just playing them and want to put them on a shelf and have some desire to like scoop a bunch of them up and like, I don't know, just rub them and be like, oh, I love these games. You're in the right company. You found your people.
So Johnny, if you've looked at some of the other episodes of the Collector's Quest podcast, it might be like 10 FM Towns variants that your mom doesn't know about. And it's a bunch of weird topics that no one cares about. Or, you know what? People care about, but it's a very niche audience. And if you looked at Collector's Quest, just like the feed of our episodes, you might think that video game collecting is for crazy people. And you know what? I think we had a bad intro because we're like, oh yeah, you know, just I've been hoarding games for 15 years. And that makes video game collecting also sound like it's for crazy people. But it is a hobby that normal people can potentially partake in healthily.
I think lots of normal people, I think lots of people have small collections of games and they don't know where to start and they don't know what to do. And they get trapped and then they like wind up only hearing weirdos who don't have any perspective. And I think what is good about us is that we do have perspective. We know that we aren't the solution. We're not the right answer, what we do. Like, we understand that. So we can help people. We can help steer people away from the mistakes that you and I continue to make.
You know, I agree. You know, maybe a better place to start would be defining types of collectors. We actually have a whole episode on types of collectors, but I think you could put game collecting into like maybe even just 2 or 3 broad categories. I don't want to say casual game collector, normal game collector. Like, you go on Reddit game collecting and, you know, people, they're going to the thrift stores. They have their collection of childhood games. They probably have a favorite console, whether, you know, Super Nintendo or PS2. You'll see a shelf and it's like, oh, like 30% of their collection is this one console. They clearly are very focused on that. And, you know, they've got a mix of cartridges, complete in box. A very normal game collection, like what a normal person would do. I'll put that into one category. Then there's people like you and VG Collectaholic who are just like, hey, what is there to own? Let me make a list of everything to own. OGCIB, I'll call him out too because he owns every video game ever made. And you guys try to own everything. Like, if there's 20,000 games to own, you guys are like, all right, let me just come up with a list and a financial plan, and I'm going to own 20,000 video games. That's a reasonable thing for a person to do.
I don't think I do that.
Johnny, how many full sets of video games do you have? What are you talking about? You have complete in box full sets of Nintendo games. Like, that's not a normal thing that just like average collectors have.
I didn't say it was normal.
You are clearly like over the top.
I mean, but I don't make like just a financial plan. I also find weird stuff. I'm more eccentric than that, Tyler. I'm a weirdo.
The difference is you have no hope of curation. Because for you to curate would mean breaking up sets, and that's just something that you're not going to do.
Well, it would also mean limiting my interests because I'm interested in all of it, which is a problem.
I think you could be interested in all of it and curate those tastes to only owning good things. Like someone who is interested in NES or Super Nintendo could buy just, say, Nintendo, Capcom, and Konami games and be like, oh, hey, those unlicensed games are cool, but you know what? I don't need to own them.
Well, see, I don't own any of those unlicensed games because they're garbage.
All right. I would call super collectors. I don't know what this category is.
I'm derailing. Just
the third category I would call the sealed games market, or even there's this new graded CIB game market, which is like completely 100% removed from the rest of the game market. You could put a, half a millimeter of shrink wrap around a game, like completely no other differences, and it could be worth like $80,000 more.
Yeah. Also just investors, people who are buying 20 to 30 of a certain game with the hope of flipping. These are not collectors per se, but they are people who inhabit the hobby.
I don't know. I feel like the game collecting it's always been a little cliquey. You've always kind of fallen into a group on a certain forum or, like a Reddit board or Instagram groups. And there's different groups of people that think very differently. I think I've been in other hobbies where it's a lot more, there's more of a consensus on how the right way to experience the hobby is. When I was painting Warhammer miniatures in high school, I never met different groups of people who were arguing about the right way to paint a miniature.
That's completely the wrong way to dry brush a figure. Ugh.
Yeah, I know.
And then there's that group that are like, you dry brush figures? Gross.
Bro, I'm just like putting a base coat on and I'm dipping it and it's like basically done. You're good.
Yeah. So comic books kind of has this a little bit. There's some broad strokes out there, but one thing that is universal about collectors is collectors, it doesn't really matter the hobby. They all kind of have the same brain. Yeah, like it's sad to kind of put it in those terms, but whatever's broken in people, they just find a hobby, or maybe this is just the human condition of like this gathering thing. But it doesn't matter. You can go collect books, comics, cards, the same kind of people, the same kind of actions, the same behaviors. They're all going to be there. Doesn't matter where you're from. So if you've collected something previously, you're going to find that kind of stuff here. Video games is nice though, because it is more broken out. So I feel like it's a little easier to find a home of exactly the type of people you want to collect with, because they collect just like you. It's a little, video games is a little less prescriptive.
So. What do you mean?
What do I mean? So I think if you were collecting comics, baseball cards, because so many of them are seen as investments now. They're just like, you buy these ones because these are the things to buy. These are the keys. You only buy these. Video games is more based on your personal nostalgia, right? So you prescribe to yourself what your collection should be rather than the group at large telling you what you should be buying.
So that is a weird thing about video games. So I agree with what you're saying, but let me get into kind of one of my first points here. I guess it's not a first point anymore. We're solidly into the show. There are more video games than there were 20 years ago, Johnny. Would you say that's a true statement?
Yeah, by a large number. And also video games have changed wildly.
20 years ago, the only thing that mattered is how rare a video game was, because almost everything was gettable, and the things that weren't gettable were the rare games. And there were so few people collecting games that even something like a complete in box Super Mario's World or a Clay Fighter Sculptor's Cut or something like Sculptor's Cut in 2003 or something it's still a rare game, but so people just saw the N64 as garbage. It was so modern and so much less interesting than, NES, the real history of Nintendo there, that people, I won't say everybody, but it just didn't have as much value as, rare Atari games, rare unlicensed NES games. That was the real hot stuff because people really wanted rarity. But now we're living in this world where thousands of video games come out every year and some percentage of those will be rare. As time goes on, the idea of a rare video game, there will be nothing more common than a rare video game. That's something they say in the rare books market. There's nothing more common than a rare book, because it doesn't matter if something's rare. It matters if someone cares about it. So I agree that video games haven't devolved into this comic market where it's oh, what are the keys? The keys are the only thing that matter. Oh, I gotta get some keys. I gotta get some minor keys. I gotta get some first appearances. But in a world where we go from 400,000 to 800,000 to 2 million video games, eventually any random video game that has any random fact about it, like, oh, this is a rare PS3 game, I don't think that's going to matter long term. And I do think video games will eventually devolve down into, oh, what are the Mario games? What are the Zelda games? What is the first appearance of Ezio in Assassin's Creed? I know nothing about Assassin's Creed. I'm just giving an example.
Yeah, I think that's a place we could definitely get. But I think for right now, people still are coming, even if that's what people are prescribing, I think there's always going to be this element that people are going to go and buy the games that they loved, right? And I think that happened in comics, but the longer you stayed, now if you just collect comics, there's just, all the videos are kind of just investor forward. Now, with video games, there are people trying to make it. And another big thing that's happened in video games over the last, we'll say, 10 years is the boutique publisher, the enforced collectability of a game by limiting how many they have and saying, it's a collectible because we're only making 1,000 of them and we're putting them out there. But if you do that twice a month, then who cares? Like this is just manufactured collectability, manufactured rarity. No one cares about it. There's no demand. Like the demand is because people FOMO and are into that. But long term, I don't know if that holds up. Also, the advent of collector's edition versus just normal editions of games kind of came out and drove some of that collectible market. So things have shifted quite a bit. And as you said, like we did move kind of away from rarity. I always said I thought demand would be the more interesting thing and where we would get long term, and that's kind of where we've hit now. I don't know where it goes from here. I don't know if it becomes 100% prescription based or whatever, but I think people will still find their way based on love, and that's nice because that keeps the hobby a little bit pure. And we have collectors coming in of all ages now. People started collecting games. You have so many different eras and collecting, I think in general, like as a general idea, has become kind of more acceptable or just a thing that people do, or the idea of alternative assets has just wedged itself into people's minds. So more people and more types of people have collections. So the age range of people starting collecting varies. So we got a bunch of different walks of life walking in, and they will value different systems, which is nice, in different time frames.
Yeah, I don't know where alternative investments came into that, but sure.
Well, because the idea that alternate, these are all, like, I'm not just going to put my money in a bank because banks are scams or the stock market is too volatile. I'm going to invest in video games. I'm going to go invest in Pokemon cards, like this idea. So I think that gave permission to people to start collecting, because then they suddenly viewed, like more people started to view it as, oh, it's an investment, but also as a gateway for them to go back to something they loved as a kid and be like, oh, I'm buying the stuff I loved as a kid now. And now I can justify it because, hey, wife, don't worry. This isn't just some weird bullshit man-child thing. This is an investment. I'm protecting us and diversifying our assets.
Yeah, that's a trap that will get you to just purchase more stuff you don't need. Just because something has value and you want to purchase it and it won't immediately lose value does not make it a good investment.
Well, yeah, we covered, we go over this in episodes like all the time. Just there are better investments than video games. Still, just there's a lot of them.
I guess, that's good first advice to start with, because some people might look at price graphs or something and be like, oh, Lester the Unlikely complete in box, it has only ever gone up with time. So, if I spend $200 on Lester the Unlikely, what are the chances of me losing money? And like, there's storing it, there's keeping it in the same condition, there's getting damaged in the mail, there's losing it in a fire, there's the fact that anyone who cares about like random SNES games that don't matter might just fall off the face of the earth. So that Lester the Unlikely, when you sell it 15 years down the line, has to beat like high yield savings account or the stock market or some other speculative investment for that to really have been a worthwhile investment, and not you just saying, oh, the line always goes up and I want to buy a Lester the Unlikely, so I should just buy a Lester the Unlikely with my last $200.
Yes. Also, Lester the Unlikely is a weird pull. Like, where Lester the
It was
Unlikely?
a childhood game of mine. My friend had it.
Okay. I'm like, man, no one has talked to me about Lester the Unlikely in a very long time, Tyler. I probably only talked
Pretty
to myself
unlikely
about
pick.
It was very unlikely. You are. I'm loving this pun that you just are leaning into. Anyways, there are better things to invest in. Short and simple. Don't view it like this. You may have got here because of this as an idea. And look, we all want permission to do the things that we enjoy. And look, we're here, we're your people. But just buy it because you love them. Here's my next bit of advice. Don't spend any money on video games you can't afford to lose. Like, it's fine. Yeah, you are like that Lester the Unlikely. Yes, maybe you spent $100, $200 on it. Maybe in 10 years, you get $225, but you would have done better anywhere else. But you could get your money out of it. Sure, great. But that's not the best place to start. Just think you probably are going to get something back, but any money you put in, just know that that was something you bought for love, for the collecting of it. Sure, maybe it's got some liquidity to it, but don't count on that. Don't make that the thing you are making the tent pole of your, retirement. Don't do it. Also, people don't consider when they're just looking at the little lines go up that selling games comes with fees, but also there's a lot of time and effort in selling games. So unless you want a second job, then don't count on video games as being the thing that is going to push you through retirement. Unless in your retirement you want to like live at the post office. This is not the thing to do.
Selling games is really the worst because selling a card is easy. You put cards in bubble mailers as long as they're like protected and people don't get mad. Selling comics is easy because they stack really well and they're all the same size. Every single video game you sell, you have to get a custom sized box. At least if you're selling like lots or more than one at a time. Like they're all going to need padding. They're all going to need bubble wrap unless you're just resigned to damage the stuff you're sending to your end customers. So yeah, it's a huge pain in the ass selling video games.
Yep.
And as a result, buying video games because no one wants to spend the extra 70 cents in bubble wrap to make sure it gets protected on its way over to you.
And you might say, oh, well, DVD games seem easy. Those are, or Blu-ray games. That seems fine, except that little paper insert now that goes in front of the games. People now care about the condition of that. Whence before, in the before times, no one cared about the paper insert condition. They wanted it to be generally nice, and yeah, they accepted that it would be wavy. But now people want that shit pristine. But that's hard because now these cases are made of recycled plastic and they have big holes cut out of them, so the integrity of them will never be nice. And if you just ship that in a bubble mailer, you're probably getting a hole in that. So anyways, selling video games is the worst. It is the worst, and it's harder than like almost every other hobby. Because if you buy a record and you want to sell it, there's a special box that you can buy to sell records. They make them all the time. It's super easy. You want to sell a comic? Special boxes for them. Cards, whatever. They get a top loader and a piece of tape. You are good to go. Games, and it's expensive, and you can't ship it media mail. So, and if you ship it customs, if it's a sealed game, they might open it. It's just, selling video games is the worst. So just consider that if this is how you got here. Again, only spend money on games that you can afford to throw away.
All right, Johnny, I want to put an image in your head. You've collected Magic the Gathering cards, right? And yes. We're just going further on about warnings before we even get further into this episode.
We have a full structure here where we're gonna like walk you through what the start is. This is just the general giant caveats in front of it.
Johnny, you've collected Magic the Gathering cards.
Yes, Tyler.
You do a lot of like drafting and stuff. You have like a lot of random stuff.
Yep.
Do you keep your draft card? You don't give your draft cards to like a 12-year-old kid at the end of the draft? What are you doing?
Sometimes I do. Sometimes I don't. I've also thrown away full boxes of Magic cards.
Yeah, sometimes I do. Sometimes I don't. But if you're playing Magic, like give your draft cards to like some 12-year-old kid. Like they will appreciate it like 3 million times more than you will because you're just going to throw it in a box. Like all my old draft decks. Just throw in a box. Never look at them again. Anyway, if you look at a box, if you're a Magic collector and you look at a box of 100,000 Magic cards, your response isn't, wow, this guy has the greatest Magic collection of all time. Your response is, wow, look at all that garbage. What's wrong? Like, I can't even imagine buying or selling that. You might as well just throw it away. And a lot of people go to like flea markets and Goodwill And there's a lot of like $2 Xbox 360 games and PS2 games that are missing a manual. Oh, I found a greatest Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, greatest hits Need for Speed Hot Pursuit on PS2 with no manual. And you know what? It's $2. And you know what you don't need to do? You don't need to buy that, because just having more quantity of any game does not improve your collection. In fact, that having that game just made your collection worse. You spent $2 to make your collection worse.
Yes, 100%. And this is like one of the first tips we ever said. Just because you found a deal on it doesn't mean you need to buy it.
Yeah, and I mean, it could be worth, $6 selling it on eBay. 300% profit. After fees and the time, it wouldn't be worth it, obviously. When you think of quality over quantity, everyone obviously says that, but then everyone also wants to own like a million video games, because video games are great, and I love so many different video games.
Circus of value.
I think this magic card analogy is the thing I think about most that works for me. When I look at a game and I actively, consciously decide not to buy it, I just think of because I've had those shoe boxes full of magic cards that are all just like 100% worthless. And, I've had comic boxes. I've had long boxes of comics and just like tons of them I did not care about. And it makes the entire comic collection more stressful, because there is some core of a couple hundred books in my comic collection that I did care about, but it was buried under like 2,000 like random dollar bin books.
Right. So, but this is the part. So, yes, if you were having this comics or magic cards, it's bulk and chaff and, endless issues versus the keys. But with video games, like I said, you can pick out the stuff that's important to you and just put all the stuff that you care about, your personal collection, on a shelf, the stuff that you love and actually care about. And then, yes, you can put valuable stuff on that shelf, but you don't need to, just because you found it for $2, you don't need to add it to your collection. It doesn't do anything for your collection. It doesn't mean you can't have a $2 game on your shelf. If that game is important to you, Last of Us, it's a $5 game, you want to put that on your shelf, totally get it. It's a cool game to have on your shelf, and people are going to see that and be like, sweet, Last of Us, I love that. But what you don't need to do is buy some rando $5 game you have no attachment to and put it on your shelf, because what are you going to do with it? What are you doing? I can tell you from experience, what are you doing? Don't do it.
It's in my backlog now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's also, stop lying to yourself. Also here, let me just do something for all these people who are coming in. Hey guys, you have permission not to play that game you just bought. It's fine to collect things just to collect things. It's okay that this is just your hobby. Just because you bought it doesn't mean you need to play it. You wanted it for your shelf. It's a game you loved as a kid. Maybe you played it a long time ago. It doesn't mean you need to go replay it. It's okay. I know people are going to be like, play your games. Cancel that noise. You're amongst your people now. You're amongst your collector friends. It's okay. Yes, your normal friends are going to ask you, do you play all these games? Don't worry about this question. Just brush it off, or just say yes.
No. What are you talking about? Yeah. Have you seen them all? Do you know how long a video game is?
Yeah. But what I'm saying is, you have permission. It's okay. Don't let people attach shame to you for this. It's okay. Just getting that out of the way right now.
There was a picture making the circles. I don't know if this was just on social media or in my video game collecting groups, but there was a puzzle collector, like some kind of high-end puzzle brand, I don't know, like Jigsaw Puzzle. And this woman had I can't imagine, 2,000 puzzles, an entire room full of boxed, sealed puzzles. And a normal person looks at that and they're like, are you gonna build them? What is this room? But we look at that and no, she's not gonna build them. She's just crazy, because we are too.
Yeah, that was me. I sent you that.
Okay, yeah. Great.
I went.
Multiple people actually sent me that.
Did that? Really? Yeah. I posted it in our Discord, but yeah. I don't want to digress too much in the episode, but I have been watching some people do something called speed puzzling, and there's a world championship for speed puzzling. If you didn't know, man, and there are puzzle collectors. I love to look at other collectors. I love collecting. I love the mindset of collecting. I love people who collect anything. I love to see them, talk to them, and just find out what they're about, because they're all, like I said, they're all the same. It's all the same brain out there, and it's fascinating. Puzzle people are weird people.
Yeah, I've seen some of those YouTube videos too. Very, very interesting hobby. I'm more into mechanical puzzles, Johnny. I think they're a lot more interesting than jigsaw puzzles.
Yeah. I like a traditional puzzle. I take them on vacation. It's a good time waster. Anyways, let's get back to video games because we'll just tangent for 25 minutes.
Right.
We don't need to.
We do tangent a lot. I mean, this is probably not most people's first episode.
Probably not. If it is, this is normal. It's okay. You'll get through it. Just put us on 1.5 speed. It's way better.
Johnny, video games are a weird collectible.
Yes.
And I think they've gotten weirder with time because they're extremely mass produced, similar to, say, a VHS tape or a DVD or a Blu-ray. But for the most part, people would look at like DVDs and Blu-rays and be like, well, that's just like garbage. That's like dollar bin flea market stuff. Who cares about DVDs? If you have a DVD collection, you just are like some crazy person with a bunch of old media. But we see video game collections as like, oh, this is old media that is worth owning. And I do think there's a distinction, like the interactive medium and kind of bespoke nature of video game consoles is a lot more interesting than just a movie. I'm not talking about that. The interesting part is in the 70s and 80s, video games came in cardboard boxes, very fragile. A lot of them were thrown out right away. And so those are those basically the rarest components in video game collecting are cardboard boxes from the 70s and 80s, because that's all the stuff that got damaged or thrown away. But then the things that were inside those boxes, the cartridges, the Nintendo cartridges, the Atari cartridges, those are extremely durable. And those are around forever. There are memes about how common Atari games are, even though they're 45 years old, because there are these little bricks of cartridges and they just, you don't damage them, they don't disappear, they're just around forever. And then you go from the cartridge, extremely durable, cardboard box, a lot less durable, a lot more fragile, a lot more condition dependent. That becomes a lot more rare and expensive if you want a nice one. And then you go to sealed, and like the only difference between a complete in box and sealed could be like a tiny piece of shrink wrap around the game. But just that single conditional variance can like skyrocket a game by 100x in price.
Well, I think sealed does one other thing that I think we both agree is kind of nice, is it takes out the mystery. And that's one of the things that happens in video games. Everyone thinks that, this video game, this Super Mario Brothers is the same from, like, I found this one and, 2 years later, they were still printing it. It's the same. The contents of that box will not be the same. And within a week of that game's printing, the contents could vary for a variety of conditions. Something at the factory, they ran out of a random insert. It's usually pretty good. It's usually pretty consistent, but there are inconsistencies. And a sealed game takes out the mystery of, do I have all the right stuff in there? It's a little bit of Schrodinger's cat too, because you're like, it could have all the inserts. It might not, but I'm never going to open it, so it doesn't matter. So when you get a CIB, finding a CIB is a little bit trickier because people have to agree at what the shared contents of that are, and it's not just a box manual game. Yeah, that's cart insert box. People say cart insert box CIB, or other people say CIB complete in box. So there's it's a bad acronym because it's used two ways and they don't mean exactly the same thing, though they're trying to mean the same thing. So there are other inserts beside a manual that sometimes come in a game. It's a reg card, maybe it's a piece of advertisement, baggies. It just varies. So how complete a game is can vary. Sealed takes away that aspect of how complete is my complete in box game.
So I kind of agree for that, and that's why I think like a sealed NES game or even a Super Nintendo game, because those boxes are packed a certain way. When you open an NES game, like a sealed NES game, the cartridge comes in a baggie and it's like folded over the top in this certain way, and it's all packed in there very nice and perfectly. And like once you take that all apart, it's very hard to get everything back exactly as nice the way it used to be. Plus, it comes like with all like the manuals and the Nintendo Power inserts and things like that. I think there is a lot of value to a sealed NES game just in the fact that, like, okay, I know the internals of this are perfect. But then there's other games Sega Genesis, Wii U, where it literally is nothing but the shrink wrap. Nintendo Switch, let's go all the way modern. It doesn't even have a freaking manual inside the box. It is just the shrink wrap in that case. Because a Sega Genesis box is not nicely packed. A Sega Genesis box is like the manual flopping around, held on by 2 cheap clips. It's horrible. I've opened sealed Sega Genesis games where the cartridge sticker is peeling up because nothing's like on an NES game, the baggie is like pressed holding down the cartridge label. Like nothing's going to happen to that cartridge label, but Sega Genesis is just like banging around in there basically. It's not banging around, but you know what
I mean, the manual is banging around because it just slides. It's not a perfect fit. Yeah. People used to think that the Genesis box was like, a gold standard because like these boxes are durable and they'll always be protected, but not understanding that the boxes themselves are causing damage to the contents. But
yeah, basically what I'm saying, if I opened up a sealed Final Fantasy, I'd be like, wow, this is amazing to have a mint sealed Final Fantasy. If I opened up a sealed Sonic the Hedgehog 2, I'd be like, oh, it's just like a 5 out of 10 complete in box, depending on how much it's been banged around.
Yeah, or let's just say Super Mario Wonder. You're just, okay, there it is. I opened it and there's the cartridge. Cool. The seal matters very little in that case.
I agree, and that's another reason that video games are weird, because you go from like the box and the components mattering a lot, and then you get into like the DVD era and the modern era, and like everything is super nice, and they're made of much more durable materials. And like there's a case like Xbox 360 Eco cases, like there's definitely some shitty materials once you get there, but like almost every Switch game you get is going to be at least a 7 out of 10. And I don't see that changing very much, 20 years down the future. I don't think we're going to have just a bunch of trashed Switch games.
Yeah, I agree.
And as we just keep printing more games, every day we must be losing like some percentage of boxed video games to the USPS every single day. Because people do not care about complete and box video games. They will just ship them to you in bubble mailers. They will pad them. It's just, people treat them like garbage. And it feels like a dwindling resource to me.
I mean, yes, and just handling the condition of boxes is on a steady curve down. That curve is not like steep, but it is consistently moving in a downward trend.
It's never getting nicer.
It's never getting nicer, but I'm saying it's not even maintaining what it was. It was always going down.
Yes. And I will say, like, I can't remember. I have handled a lot of trading cards, Johnny. I can't remember a time that I've damaged a trading card. I do remember I've probably damaged 2 comics by taking them out of bags, I think, and getting them, like, caught on tape because I'm an idiot. Like, they weren't valuable or anything, but I have damaged comic books. But video games, like, I remember I've dropped I have a Sweet Home. I had a nice Sweet Home. Now it has a dent in the corner because I remember dropping it. I dropped it in the room I'm in right now. Just like a week ago, I dropped a Super Mario Brothers on a Famicom Complete Box Super Mario Brothers first print, and I put a big hole in the back. But the good ending to this story, I opened up the box and it was missing one of the box flaps. So I'm like, well, this box was garbage anyway. But yeah, I think basically whether they're in collections or being shipped around, I think boxed video games, like old boxed video games, not new ones, are like one of our most precious dwindling resources, Johnny. And I'm not saying that to hype up Complete in Box. It's more of I'm sad at how harder it is to get nicer boxes as time goes on. You look at a video game collection from like 2005 and all of their boxes are mint. It's nuts. You would never see that. Like, not like a super collector. Maybe just go back to like a regular collector in 2005. They don't have to be like some crazy guy. You look at all these Nintendo and Super Nintendo and Atari games, and like 70% of their boxes are like near mint. And it's like, where did those all go? You look on eBay now, it's like every Atari game is just wrecked. They're just gone.
Box protectors are also a fairly new thing that has happened. And also box protectors aren't perfect.
But get box protectors. I think you're going to say that later in the episode.
We'll talk about it. But let's get into how people should actually, we've done a lot of the warnings and doing it. Right. Let's talk about, hey, Tyler, I'm a new collector. What should I collect?
Johnny, if you can't answer that question, maybe don't collect video games, because this is a hobby driven by like compulsive weirdos. Like, you shouldn't need a reason to want to get into this.
No, you should let nostalgia be your guide.
I mean, it doesn't have to be nostalgia. I think nostalgia is so overrated.
I don't.
But then again,
so.
I grew up as a Sega Genesis kid, and I remember playing Nintendo and Super Nintendo at my friend's house. And so I grew up. I guess it is nostalgia because I went and I wanted to collect all the things I didn't have. So I had like Game Gear and Genesis, and I wanted all like the Game Boy and Nintendo stuff. But fuck nostalgia. You could collect something you're interested in without it being nostalgia.
Yeah, true. But that's what I'm saying. Like, you have an idea of what do you find interesting, like whether it's the games you grew up with as a kid or a system you've just always wanted to check out. You should have an idea. Don't let us answer that for you. Don't let investor videos answer that for you, or some random guy on the internet who just like his mission is to go to garage sales and buy as many Nintendo games as he can, or Sega games, or whatever. This is a question for you to know, like, really think about it, and then your journey begins.
Yeah, and so I got pulled in I was on Game TZ, Digit Press, and Nintendo Age, which are all forums that no one goes on anymore, when I started collecting. But I definitely got pulled into circles where like the prevailing thing to do was to try to get the licensed US set of NES games. The set of 677, it's a fake set, it doesn't count. If you hang out in some circle of people who collect a thing, they will make you want to collect that thing. What Johnny said is right, is what I'm trying to say. Don't get influenced by people. Find your own thing that you want to collect. Otherwise, you're just going to like get pulled into this thing, and like it might become a job of like checking something off a list. And you're like, well, the right thing to do is to go after PS3, because I mean, look at the price graphs. PS3 is at the lowest it's ever going to be. So like I could be the guy who has the full PS3 set. And I don't think that's the right thing to do.
I don't either. And a little bit about what Tyler was talking about. People can be very passionate about a thing, and passion is contagious. So if it's someone who's generally like, man, I have to tell you about this. It's the GameCom. It's the coolest system I ever had as a kid. And let me tell you why it's great. You might be like, man, maybe I do want to collect GameCom games. No, you don't. You don't care about that. You absolutely do not. You were impressed by how passionate that guy was, and he was making it seem cool because he loves it, and that's cool. But you should find whatever that feeling he's generating, you should find what you feel that way actually about. Find the thing that speaks to you in that way truly from your own experience, not somebody else's.
Johnny, in terms of historical importance and variance and depth of knowledge of like NES, it's just the best. You got to collect NES. It's the coolest thing to collect. There's licensed, there's unlicensed, there's so many variants. It goes crazy. You can have like a $50 game with a $1,000 variant. So much to hunt for. There's screws, there's PCBs, It's the basis
for all video game collecting. It's the most foundational system. We even like, as a video game, it's the most foundational system. And for collectors, it's the most foundational system. It's the perfect system. You should definitely collect it, right?
I would apply all of those statements to Atari 2600.
No way. Get the F out. This is not a debate.
They care about variance, and they cared about variance before Nintendo people
it's
did?
Not. They're not foundational, and I will not stand for you trying.
It is the foundation!
No, it is not. Because they were buried. They, much like E.T., they were put in the bin and buried by time. No one cares.
They were buried by time.
Yeah,
well, let me go to NintendoAge.com. Oh,
Tyler,
it's dead. There is no NintendoAge.com. Oh, let me go to the biggest retro game forum on the internet, AtariAge.com. Oh, look at all these people discussing fucking ColecoVision. It's not buried. You've buried your head to the depth and greatness of Atari collectors.
Tyler, no, you're wrong. You were 100% wrong, and we're not talking about this right now. This isn't the episode for that. We can do that episode later. We're talking to the people. Goddamn maniac.
All right, so another trap not to fall into is trying to figure out what the best deal is and just collecting the cheapest console to collect. And I used to do this too, so I know multiple people who over the years have been like, oh, Odyssey 2, what would it cost to collect every Odyssey 2 game? Like $1,500? Yeah, I bet I could start collecting Odyssey 2 or Sega 32X. There's only like, a few dozen 32X games? Yeah, I better go for a full 32X set just because it's easy. More recent example, look at how many people have full sets of Wii U, because there's only like 100-something games on the entire Wii U library, and they're modern games, so like they're very easy to find them all.
100%
And like,
true.
maybe don't do that. Maybe The Devil's Third is not a very interesting and exciting game. Oh, I hate The Devil's Third. I have no idea why anyone cares about The Devil's Third, Johnny.
Don't digress. Let's stay on topic.
I'm trying. Yeah, don't collect things just because they're cheap. Like, the easier something is to collect, like an Odyssey 2 complete and box set, a full complete box set, like 70% of Odyssey 2 games are just like worthless. And then like there's an interesting-ish 30%, but the fact that it's so easy to get a full Odyssey 2 set means like you're not going to care about your Odyssey 2 set. No one else is going to care about your Odyssey 2 set. So unless you are like a vintage game super fan, it is not worth collecting something just because it's cheap and easy.
Yeah, remember that feeling, if you don't have it for it, just leave it alone. Leave it alone. Let someone else do it. You would be better off spending $500 on 2 games than $500 on 50 bad games.
Perhaps, let's say, The Secret of Mana and Super Punch-Out. I don't even think those would cost $500. I think you can get that less. Johnny, let me move on to this next bullet point. The most common basic stuff is good. Good in all capital letters.
Yeah.
Game collectors are dumb as fuck. We buy the dumbest things just to go back to it. Game collectors are like, oh, Clay Fighter, Sculptor's Cut, and Rule of Rose, and Car Battler Joe just sold for $5,000 on Heritage Auctions. Who cares about Car Battler Joe? I understand there's a group of GBA weirdos. We hang out with a lot of them. They care about Car Battler Joe.
No, they don't.
$5,000? How many good video games can you get for $5,000?
We don't care that much about Car Battler Joe.
Okay.
That's weird that it went for that much. Anyways, go on.
It was sealed. I mean, what? Someone's going to be talking, oh, this is impossible. Sealed. There's only 3 sealed copies of Car Battler Joe. Wow. 3 sealed copies to go around all 6 of you. I don't know how you guys are going to sort this out. It's a conundrum.
True.
Johnny, if you fill your collection with games like New Super Mario Bros. U, Pikmin, Kirby's Dream Course, your collection is going to be the best. It'll be the best. You can't have too many first-party Nintendo games. Or, Capcom, Konami, before Konami started sucking. You know what I mean.
Oh, before Capcom started sucking. So look, I just want to caveat here. We're going to talk a lot about Nintendo, and it's because it's probably the most foundational system, and that's what everyone collects. Despite what Tyler just said, you notice all of his examples are not Atari, and they are Nintendo. Just saying. But name recognition, it's super easy to be like, oh, rare, valuable, whatever. But what you're going to be looking for is just the same thing most people are looking for. Like when someone new walks into your room, they recognize and see those games and they're going to go, I love these games. Buy the games you love. It's a very simple message that I have long said. Buy the games you love. You will be happier with your collection in the long term. Because what's going to happen if you eventually have to sell any of it, you're like, I guess I can get rid of this one, but I love this game and it's not very expensive anyway, so I guess I'll just keep it. That's great. That's what, if that's just your collection, you will have an awesome collection. It'll be great. It'll just be full of stuff that you think is awesome, and it wasn't that expensive, and that means you can't really be that financially hurt by it, and that's great.
I mean, it's not even down to finances. I mean, I guess it could be because the common games are the only games that are going to matter as time marches on. When eventually, far enough into the future, probably in our lifetimes, the entire NES console is going to get distilled down into maybe 5 games. It's going to be Mario, Zelda, I don't know, Metroid, Contra. I'm trying to think of what are the ones that will stand out, and just literally everything else. No one's going to have time to think about, 100-year-old video games.
Final Fantasy,
how often do you think about movies from the 1920s? You don't. You think about the 3 important movies you can think of from the 1920s.
Yeah, you're like, oh man, these are the 5 best films ever from the 1940s.
Exactly. And some film historian will be like, no, you don't understand. The Magic of Shahrazad on NES is such a cool and interesting game. And you're going to be like, I don't care, dude. I'm over here playing PlayStation 13.
Yep. And that's going to be leave that for the people who are budding. These are cinephiles who go deep into deep cinephiles who get into that kind of stuff. Save that for the future, whatever the equivalent is for video game people who are off the deep edge, who want to talk to you about games like The Magic of Sierra Hot or Chubby Cherub. Like no one gives a shit. They're like, oh man, you haven't played games until you've played Archon. Like,
oh yeah, everyone's into Archon.
Yeah.
So go into that movie analogy though. Like I'm going to call out maybe someone that we talked to, Bird Dog Gaming, is looking for Disney sports basketball because like what I know that guy loves weird rare games like that. Like this is obviously his thing. He totally wants to buy this.
Disney he's also going for the set. He wants the whole GameCube set.
On the GameCube it's like $1,000. And we're talking about in the future, like 50 years from now, when people look back on the GameCube, is anyone, regardless of how rare Disney Sports Basketball is in 50 years, because I'm sure more copies are going to disappear by then, is anyone even going to think about Disney Sports Basketball? Or are they going to look at the GameCube and be like, oh, there was one of those Mario games. Oh, so Super Mario Sunshine, that was the GameCube Mario game, and Wind Waker. And they're going to be like, okay, those are the two games I really need to think about on Nintendo GameCube. Because they're going to compress everything down into like the most digestible bites. And your cool, rare Car Battler Joe type shit is like, that is gone. That is completely lost to history. There have been 50 more years of games that no one ever bought. So it's just another one of those games no one ever bought.
Yeah, guess what? Hatris on the Nintendo, no one's talking about it.
Why is no one talking about Hatris?
The same reason they're not talking about Zoop on the Super Nintendo.
Well, I mean, that one makes more sense. This is another reason I think game collecting is weird, because the sealed market is entirely the opposite. So the sealed market largely blew up in 2019, 2020, and a lot of card collectors and comic collectors came in, and they were speculating on the stuff that should be valuable. They were like, oh, let me buy the Marios, the Zeldas, the Punch-Out, the Contras, the Metroids, just like all the obvious common quote-unquote stuff, and like pumped those prices up way past things like stadium events and Nintendo World Championships, which were typically seen as the most desirable things for a game collector to have because they were the rarest and on the right console.
Yes.
So what I'm saying is that the sealed guys are all right. Not all right. Nope. They're definitely not all right. They are all correct.
And here's what happened. So here's the end result of that. So all these video game collectors that were out there when these investors came in, they're like, oh my God, these guys bought up all the games I actually love, and they're not buying this stupid shit like Car Battler Joe. How dare they? Now I need to go buy Mike Tyson's Punch-Out and Zelda. Yeah. No shit.
Like, I feel like there are a significant number of people who had that exact reaction, who they've been spending all their time being like, oh, I gotta find the rare GameCube games. Let me get what's the Cubivore or something. Let me get Gotcha Force, because I know these are the ones that are going to be hardest to get. And then COVID happens, and everyone's like buying up GameCube, and they're like, oh, what do I need? I need Super Mario Sunshine. And all of a sudden, Super Mario Sunshine is over $100, because regardless of the fact that there are a million copies out there, that's the game people actually think about and actually want.
Yeah. And that, if you were an early listener of Collector's Quest, you may have noticed that we said Mario should be more important than stadium events. I promise you it will be. And hey, here we are. I was right in the worst possible way, Tyler.
And this goes to the reason that you should collect the good basic common stuff, even like if it's the stuff you know is the best. Like, all right, let's Super Mario Sunshine being like maybe a B+ level Mario game. It's A tier on the GameCube, obviously. There are so many games like that have like hovered. Maybe it's a game that's like hovering around $15, and you just look at it and you're going to be like, yeah, it's $15. I could just pick that up whenever. Like, whatever. I know I want that game. I know it's an important game, but like Grand Theft Auto 3, it's like a $6 game. Like, whatever, Grand Theft Auto 3. And then if that game spikes up to $60, like, you're going to be like, what the fuck? Oh, I knew this was a good game, but I didn't buy it. What am I doing? I was over here buying Car Battler Joe. I'm so sorry, Car Battler Joe. We are harping on Car Battler Joe. Buy the common stuff. It's good. It's good. It's good to own a Grand Theft Auto 3, Johnny. I think everyone should own a Grand Theft Auto 3. It is worth the $6 investment. It's one of the most important games ever made.
I agree. It's why I say Last of Us. Like, one of my favorite games. Hey, go buy Portal and The Last of Us. Just do yourself a favor.
Yeah. go get BioShock, go get Portal
Yeah.
2, go get the orange box. Like, you can go on Xbox 360, and like, I know we're saying like don't just load up on stupid garbage, but like on modern console, on like Xbox 360, PS3, I don't know, maybe PS4, but like you can load up on good stuff, like important games that are like $1, that are like $5.
Yeah.
Like, maybe
100%.
don't get Bullet Witched or Autobahn Police, because who cares about those games? But you can get all the you can get probably 6 Halo games on Xbox 360 that are less than $5 each. Maybe less than $10 each. I don't know.
And also, we're entering a new phase of video games. I mean, it's already started happening, but I think more people are realizing it as we hit the remake era, and the re-releasing of games on each new system. This is now happening. So, going back and finding that original system that game was on and getting it for cheap now, you're going to feel really good about it. You're going to feel so smart.
I definitely agree. I fully support buying originals and not remakes. I recognize a lot of people who listen to our podcast have purchased the Super Mario RPG on Switch. That's fine. I'll say that's fine. I understand that's probably a very expensive game now. What is that like?
Well, I mean,
$300?
that's a little bit outside even it's within what I'm talking about, but we're like, let's talk about The Last of Us 2. Like, go buy The Last of Us 2 on the PS4, the system it came out on, even though a remake for the PS5 is happening.
Oh, okay. All right, sure.
Like that's more, but also what you said is true. Like, if, yes, Super Mario RPG, fine. Pick it up on the Switch. Spoiler alert, I did. But I also have the original, so.
I'm a disciplined person who did not buy that. I feel so good about not buying that.
I actually think I'm going to play it, so we'll see. Well, and by play it, I mean I'm going to do it for like an hour and be like, yep, that's what I remember and stop.
All right, Johnny, should we move on to our most important thing that we talk about?
All right, Tyler, the most important section, have goals. This is, look, there are a lot of video games, as Tyler and I have said, and there's more coming out every single day, and they can be exciting, and people can be influential. Like, we're talking a lot about Zeldas and Marios, and you could be like, I guess I need to get them Zelda and Marios. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. The point is, set a goal. You will see cool games, like, you're going to see them all day. If you are on social media, you could spend all day looking at cool games that people post, but that doesn't matter. You can't own every game. And trust me, Tyler and I have kind of tried. And some people in our Discord are almost there. It's almost obtainable, but you don't want to do that. So what you should do is you should make a decision. You should decide, I want to collect. Again, we talked about that feeling you get that makes you feel good. You're like, yes, this is interesting. I like this. I want to own these. Establish that, pick that feeling, and then make your decision. Say, all right, maybe it's original Nintendo games. Okay, I'm going to buy original Nintendo games. Now let's make a second decision. How am I collecting those games? Am I collecting cart only? Am I going to buy CIB games? Complete in box. Am I going to only buy sealed games? Okay, you've established that. I'm going to buy complete in box games only because carts are, there's just not enough going on there for me. I want a more robust experience. And I'm only buying licensed games, and I'm only going to buy games that are first party or Capcom or Konami. That's it. I don't care about, Taito games. I don't care about Tengen, even though that's not licensed. I don't care about any of this other stuff. I'm sticking to these parameters. I'm going to buy the first party Nintendo games, mainly the black box stuff, and I'm going to buy all the best Konami and all the best Capcom games. There, you have a goal. You've set a goal, and you've got a list now. Like, go make your list. You've got about 50 games on it. Make that list. Stick to that list. That is what you want to do.
I would say 25% of having goals is about making sure that you get the actual things you want. So think of what your end collection looks like, or, at least, your collection in 5 years, and how you could work towards having that collection, keeping you focused on, maybe like a big ticket item. If there's a game like a complete in box Super Mario RPG, I don't know what that is. That like $300 right now? I'm pulling that out of thin air. But like, if you keep buying new Nintendo Switch games that comes out, like that are $60, $60, you might never get to the point where you want to drop $300 on a complete and box Super Mario RPG. And if you have a bunch of games that you want to have like that in 5 years, like you have to really stay focused on making sure you get that. And so I think that's 25% of what having goals is. And then 75% of it is having a reason to not buy all the other shit, like you said, like all the cool stuff you see on social media, you going through someone's YouTube game collection, you see all these cool, you might see a console that you've never thought of collecting before, some limited editions. You're getting emails in your inbox from freaking limited run games, and they're like, oh, we got this new $189 Castlevania thing. And if you know that you have a goal of like, all right, well, I really want Castlevania 4, and I really want Super Metroid, and I really want Super Mario RPG, and you have like the prices listed out, and you know how much it's going to cost, you know that buying that limited run games Castlevania thing is not meeting your collection goals. So really important, I think, to have it written out and to stick to it. And for me, one of the most important things that I ever did was kind of cutting off modern games. And I obviously haven't cut off modern games completely, but I know I don't want to be a collector of 2000s and above because there's just too much of it. And it's so easy for me to look and appreciate and be like, wow, you've got you've got the sealed Demon Souls Deluxe Edition, and I could just be like, okay, that's awesome, and I don't need to own that because I'm more focused over here.
Yeah, I mean, that's the point of the goal. Having a focus, having a list, something to come back to, just to drag your attention and put it back on track is a great tool. And again, we talked about that Super Mario RPG. It's great. It's a great example right now because the Switch version just came out and you're like, I really want that one. But like, yeah, this one game is expensive. But if you can get a copy for between $250 and $450, and here's the other thing, decide what condition meets what condition is important to you. Because some people are going to be very finicky. Remember, condition is still king. If you're looking at like a long-term investment, always buy the best condition that you can afford. That's just like a tip. But if you just don't care, you can do better. But $250, like if you're just like, I bought 8 Switch games, that could have been your Super Mario RPG that you had on your list. And in the end, those 8 Switch games are probably going to go on sale, and you're not going to care about them long term. But this Super Mario RPG would have been a beautiful piece on your shelf that you're always going to love.
And I think you need to prioritize your list and put monetary values on it, I think, that just to make it easier to prioritize. And I think you should put on the things you want most regardless of how much they cost. And you could prioritize something down if it costs a lot of money. But, if you see what's something that someone might want, like a Legend of Zelda on NES, let's say a first print Legend of Zelda, because that's like $1,000. If that's like the thing you want, you're like a huge Zelda fan, and you want a first print Legend of Zelda, but like $1,000 is a super off-putting price. So like you're off buying your stupid limited run game garbage. I think it helps me get focused and save up if I see that stuff at the top of my list. I have like unreasonable stuff on my goals list that I know I will never own, but having it there like makes it like keeps me focused and thinking about like one day, if I do manage things correctly, how I could maybe make something happen. So a thing I have at the top of my goals list is a gold Rockman 4 cartridge. This is a prize cartridge, a Famicom prize cartridge in Japan given to the art. There was an art contest to design the Robot Masters for Rockman 4. And the 8 winners of that contest got this cartridge. And I think 5 of them are accounted for. And they're all owned by Japanese people who aren't selling them. It would, like, I imagine this would probably sell for over $50,000. Like, I'm very clearly not going to own this, but something about having it there is like, well, what about my collection one day? What if, I don't know, what if I win the lottery? What if I want to sell my Xbox? This is obviously way out of my reach, but I still put it on my list because I want to know what the things I want most are.
It's good that it draws your attention back to the things that are important. I collect a little bit differently than Tyler in this, and this is, you can apply this as broadly as you think for yourself as well. Yes, keep a list. Like, if you know you're going to buy everything on the list, having the values on there, getting save searches on eBay, knowing like what's going for, what the market looks like, that's very important. But also prioritizing, but just knowing the general values and knowing like if everything is a priority on your list, be opportunistic. So this allows you to look for deals. Like first set a budget for yourself. We're going to talk about that later, but like have a budget in mind. You're like, okay, I only spend $200 this month. And you know that there's 3 Super Nintendo games, and maybe you're like, Super Mario RPG is kind of outside. I'm going to have to save for like 2 months. You know you'll get there eventually. But if you suddenly find a Legend of Zelda that comes up and it was only $175, and then that F-Zero you really wanted, someone just put a like pretty nice one out for $20 and it's normally $40. Like I snap those off because that deal may never come around again. Like within your list, knowing the values helps you know when a deal has actually happened. So that just be cognizant of that. If you ever want a deal, you have to know what things are going for and be able to evaluate in real time and be looking consistently to know if a price is a deal. So if you're just prioritizing, like, I'm not going to feel good until I own the top 3 things, then you should definitely just sit down, save, know what the prices are, and then get those and then look for deals. But if you're eventually going to consume everything on that list, this is how I do it because I'm a whack job. I look for opportunities. The best opportunity to buy, at least like within the moment. I'm like, okay, maybe one day you'll find a better deal. But at that moment, you're like, market price is $50. I found one for $30. That's a great savings. I feel good about dropping that money right now.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely buy opportunistically and things like that. And I actually prioritize my goal list based on, how can I put this? Like, what the best deals are right now would be. So like, obviously like that Gold Rockman 4 is not like the number one thing on my want list because it's not happening. It's not like something I'm realistically saving up towards. But if I was collecting, let's say the GameCube, everyone's collecting GameCube. Let's go with GameCube. Disney Sports Basketball would not be the number one thing on my list just because it's like in the top 3 most expensive GameCube games. And that would be like the coolest to own. I would this is a terrible example because I'm sure the GameCube has been figured out. When you look at an entire console library, if you are collecting the entire console library, which maybe you shouldn't do, there's going to be this weird middle ground of some games in like the $20 to $80 range that are way rarer than their price dictates. Like there are probably games that are on similarly rare to Disney Sports Basketball that cost like $60. And it might be like Slot Car Race or whatever that game is. But those are the kinds of games I would prioritize. The games that haven't been figured out yet. If you have, say, complete in box hang tab Super Mario Brothers on your want list, that people know that a hang tab Super Mario Brothers complete in box now is like a couple $100s or a few $100s. Like people have figured that out. That is probably not something that is going to change in price wildly if you don't buy it in the next 3 months. And I'm not saying that's going to happen with any game, but if you find like a game like, whoa, there's no copies of this GameCube game and it's only $25, like that's the kind of stuff I would prioritize higher on my list rather than just, like even over like Super Mario Sunshine or Disney Sports Basketball.
Yeah, 100%. That is completely accurate. And this was a tactic that Tyler and I both used. Back in the day, there was a rarity guide and we would go look at all the rarity 8s and 7s and 9s that were underpriced compared to their competitors or their contemporaries. And we would target those games because eventually those would move up in price.
I feel bad acting like collecting full sets is the thing you should do.
You shouldn't.
But, I mean, to go into our research thing, if you are going to do this, Johnny, you cannot look up rarest, uncommon, undiscovered GameCube games. The correct way to do this research, which our good friend Joe has started doing for every Nintendo console, you go on eBay, you search manually, you come up with a good search that only gets that one game. You look for every single game, 600 searches just to do one console, and you start counting how many real listings there are of like the US complete in box, decent condition copy of every single game. And Just by doing that, that'll take you like hours, but no one does it. Literally, no one does this. Everyone just listens to what everyone else has to say about rarity. No one searches and finds their own thing. And I know there are a few people. Joe does it. Bird Dog Gaming does it. They like, this is a very fun thing to do, to find kind of undiscovered, uncommon games or games that are really underpriced. But you search for every GameCube game just by doing that. It'll take you like a weekend. You will learn so much about the GameCube library. You will find like weird variants. You will find like undiscovered rare games, undiscovered uncommon games, or things that you just like think are priced wrong. And it could really, really help prioritize what you want to buy.
100%. But that goes into a thing we'll talk about later, but research in this hobby is key. Whoever has the person with the best information gets the best deals.
Oh, 100%. Yes.
So something to keep in mind. That's just, I would have that in my further notes, just like my general advice to you, new collector, old collector. The best information always wins. Knowledge has always been power, will remain always being power, and that applies here as well.
So here, just a fun example. So Joe recently did this for NES in September, and he published his data, which is crazy. No one like does this and then publishes everything they learned. In the last 90 days, when he did his search, there were 11 sold copies of Little Samson and 7 sold copies of Alex DeMio's Race America. So on his list, Alex DeMio's Race America is a rarer game than Little Samson. Also rarer than Flintstones Dinosaur Peak. And I'm not saying like Alex DeMio's Race America should be like the new NES Grail for like, whatever, NES set collectors, but like very clearly, if that $80 game is rarer or as rare than like a $3,000 game, maybe you should buy that $80 game if you're an NES collector.
Yes. I mean, there are other factors that work there. Games that are known to be expensive or rare do get pushed into auctions more often because they have a perceived value, whereas something like Race America may not have perceived value. But that's where your research is going to come in. You're going to be able to find things like that, and then you'll know if it's, you'll know what the auction landscape looks like. You'll have all the information, and that will help you best decide on how to buy games. So a little bit of research goes a long way.
I guess we haven't touched on this, but don't listen to anyone, including like websites like Price Charting and Game Stonks and Racket Boy. These are great websites. These are really good. Like reading Racket Boy is a good way to get a grasp on a console and what collectors think is exciting and think is rare. But the only way you're going to find out what's actually rare and actually not available is by doing the research yourself.
Yeah. I mean, and there will, like, I don't want to just, like, be like, they're not going to know. A lot of the stuff that everyone knows is rare. It is. Like, people know it is rare. That's fine. But if you're hunting through the middle ground and want to know, you want to know the real dirt on everything else, you have to go into those undiscovered, unexplored areas.
And it could turn you into such a snob. And I'm talking about the Clay Fighter Sculptor's Cuts, the loose Clay Fighter Sculptor's Cuts. And I'm talking about Rule of Rose. Because you start looking, if you just like do a lot of searching for random video games, there's a ton of games you'll come across where you'd be like, wow, there's like one copy of this game and like no one cares about it. None in sold. Like this game doesn't exist. Like what's a game like Chavez 2 on Super Nintendo? That's a game you could search for and there's just like no copies anywhere. It's just gone. There's no Chavez 2. And then you look for like Rule of Rose or Clay Fighter Sculptor's Cut, and there's 30 copies on eBay. And it's like, why are people paying $1,000 for this game there's 30 copies of, on the premise that this is quote-unquote rare? And great way to become a snob is to just look up games like that all the time. I realize that popular stuff comes to market more often, but it still feels ridiculous that people are paying $1,000 for a loose cartridge of Sculptor's Cut. When, like, clearly something like Super Bowling is just, like, more rare than Sculptor's Cut. It just is.
Yeah, you will. If you like just read popular articles, they get it wrong a lot because they just look at aggregates and aggregates aren't checking facts. So they'll just be like, hey, yeah, this game, this is the rarest game. I mean, just going back to Rule of Rose, if you do a search like rarest PS2 games, Rule of Rose is going to show up on a lot of lists as the rarest game, and it is not. It's not close. But you will hear about it. and people will then think it. And then once it gets published somewhere, then someone picks it up, and then that becomes a narrative. Doesn't matter that it's false. It just becomes the narrative. So you have to do your research to know whether that narrative is actually true. Does that change Rule of Rose from being an expensive game? No, it sure does not. Because the narrative has already been accepted, and it does have some rarity, so the price will still remain. It's not going to just suddenly deflate, and you're not going to be able to do an expose on Rule of Rose showing that it's only the 10th rarest PS2 game and it's going to burst its bubble. That's not happening, but it will assist you down the line in making better decisions, better purchasing decisions. Hopefully, you aren't collecting PS2 survival horror games, because then you've got to buy Rule of Rose. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Also, when you find out interesting insights like this, you could share them and it's fun. And I love discussing this stuff, but you will never change public perception that has just been ingrained. Whatever people think, once people start collecting a console, it just seems like they think that forever. So Rule of Rose will always be a top PS2 game. It the fact that it's at the top just cements it as a top PS2 game. No matter what happens, it has the clout of being a top PS2 game, regardless of what it is otherwise. I'm not saying it's not always going to be on the top, whatever not Koldelka. What's the stupid game that's on top now? It's a From Software game.
Well, there's, oh God, not Koldelka. It's the one I have in bad condition. Not Way of the Samurai, not Blood Will Tell. That's third. Why am I missing the other most...
It's Kuon.
Kuon. I'm does it start with a K? It does. Kuon. Yeah.
All right. Johnny, let's move on from this.
Okay.
Unless...
So just to reiterate all that, have a goal, do some research, make your list. Make your list. Be disciplined. Just make your list. Google Sheets is your friend. Just do it. Before you get into fancy softwares or Game Eye and all this other bullshit, you're gonna here's just a quick caveat. All these apps are kind of bad. They all have their problems. Make a manual list first. Just go in, write the first 50 games you want to buy. Just write it down on a Google Sheet that you have access to from your phone, and just do that. I promise that's gonna go a lot. Do the advanced stuff later, but just this first step, you're going to be so happy with the results if you just write out your own list and then do some research and put some notes next to it. And then you just pull up that list and you'll know what's going on. Back in the olden times, when we went around on horse and buggy, I had a folder I used to carry around with me full of notes and sheets and stuff that I was printing from the internet because there wasn't apps and you couldn't, things weren't easily trackable and smartphones weren't a thing really. So I had this dumb collector binder and the digit press guide that I just took with me when I was hunting video games. It was the nerdiest shit ever, but trust me, having all that information with me made me a better collector and made sure I got better deals.
All right, Johnny, let's move on to conditions of video games. Okay. Loose, complete in box, and sealed. So I'm only collecting video games actually, Johnny, because I heard that sealed games are the way to instantly get rich. It's like Bitcoin now. I heard you could sell a copy of Twisted Metal for $200,000. So okay. I'm here to get some of that cash.
You want to get rich? I get it.
Yeah. So I should only collect sealed long box PS1 games because sealed's the way to go.
Yeah, 100%. That's what you should do if you love sealed long box games for some reason.
No, stop. All right. How do you feel about Condition, Johnny? I think you very obviously collect mostly complete in box games, and you have some really crazy sealed stuff that people don't know about, but you have 0 graded games.
Well, no, I have one. I was given a gift of one. I have a, well, I don't want to get the name wrong, but it's Kobe Bryant. It's the NBA game PS2 with Kobe Bryant on it.
What, like NBA 07 or NBA 06? One of those?
Yeah. I was given to by Mike.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So it was a very nice gift, and I'm sorry that I forgot the name of it, but it's an awesome Kobe Bryant cover, and he gave it to me so I would have a sealed game, and it's funny because it's a sports game and it's Kobe Bryant. So that's the one. I'm not like opposed to graded games necessarily. It's just not something that does anything for me. Like there are games I would consider grading. Like I've told you I would get a graded Final Fantasy just because I love it so much. And, I would be fine with having that one, but it would like have to be the right copy. But in general, that's just not part of who I am as a collector. But condition is not properly rated still. It's catching up. It used to be condition like kind of didn't matter. Now condition is mattering more and more and more, but I still don't think it's there yet. Also, completeness of a game is still undervalued.
Yeah, I totally agree. This is another area where I think game collectors are just so dumb, and people came in from like comics and cards to game collecting, and they're like, what are these idiots doing? Because the main website people use to track video game prices is pricecharting.com, and you look at the prices, and it has, you have Super Mario World, and it has cartridge and complete and like sealed maybe, and like a complete in box Super Mario World does not have one price that represents the complete in box price. It's crazy to do that in any other hobby, because going into comics, Johnny, a 6.0 giant X-Men 1, that's like a pretty nice book. If you don't rate comics, like 6.0, like you would look at it and be like, yeah, all right, that's pretty cool. It's worth like $2,500. An 8.0, 2 grade points up, is worth like $5,000. And if those were a video game, like literally on eBay, just like a regular complete box video game, those are the exact same thing. In comics, you would look at those books and be like, oh, those are almost the same. Double in price, $2,500 difference. You look at your copy of Super Mario RPG on the Super Nintendo, you look at like what you would call like a 6 out of 10 versus like a 7.5 out of 10. Those will probably sell for the same price.
Yep.
And like it is stratifying itself out now, but the fact that we have this website price charting that anchors video games to one price, it has kept prices on nice complete in box games down. And over the past 3 years, this has gotten a lot worse because people have snapped up all the nicest games out of the marketplaces. But even now, if you're looking for a game and you find like an 8 out of 10 condition, Boxel 2 on Game Boy, a game that no one thinks about, it's probably not going to be double the price charting price. It's probably not going to be 6 times the price charting price, because people would look at that and be like, well, why would I buy this copy of Boxel? Price charting says it's a $40 game. Why would I pay $200 for that, even if it's like a super nice copy? Game collectors are super unwilling to pay multiple time premiums for nicer games, except in the sealed market, which is a completely different beast. But this is a place where I really think like complete in box can definitely be very undervalued.
100%. It's a flaw of game collecting, and much like when investors came in and were just like, I'm going to buy all of your Marios. And then all the regular collectors are like, my Marios. This is going to happen. And Tyler and I have witnessed this. Like, as we search through games, like, even though I have a complete Super Nintendo set, as I go back and I look, I'm like, man, there are just large chunks where you go look for the basic common Super Nintendo games in nice condition, and they're not there. And then when they start to appear, they appear at a big premium price, and they might sit there for a long time because people haven't caught up, but they're going to. And what I'm saying is, like, the price charting price now, you see, when you like start to look at it, all those boxes are going to be kind of hot garbage. Like I said, buy the condition you can afford, right? And that you're comfortable with. But I would always err to buying the best condition that you can find. Now, if that price doesn't make sense, obviously don't do that. But in the end, condition is king, and right now it's still undervalued.
We're in like a weird transition phase in video games where we went from like one price, one game, like, oh, this is a nicer box, like I'll throw an extra $10 at the nicer box. And we're getting to the point where like people want to grade complete in box video games. People want to put like really big price differences on a 7.0 versus an 8.5, but it's definitely not there yet in the regular complete in box market. I think if you're buying a Ninja Gaiden 2 and there's a bunch of meh copies and one copy is like clearly like 9 out of 10 condition, all the inserts better than everything else, and it's like twice the price of everything else, it is clearly worth twice the price. But in the game collecting market, I don't know the market for Ninja Gaiden 2, but that copy of Ninja Gaiden 2 is probably more than twice as rare as all like the very average condition copies that it's competing against. But the market won't value it like that. And I think as time goes on, it definitely will. I don't see a future where video games do anything but become more like cards and comics and coins, where condition starts mattering more than anything almost.
So, and this phenomenon, just so we name it, is called conditional rarity. And within games, you can have games that you can still find, but you may never find a 9 or an 8 of them, or, you know, you're probably never finding a 10, but 9s will collect a super premium. So knowing the difference there and knowing when a game is hard to find in the nicest condition, understanding this as a concept is important.
And so this is another thing where video games are kind of weird and different from a lot of hobbies, because the people who care about this, if you really want the best condition thing, you're only going to buy sealed games. So kind of everyone who cares about like speculating and getting the best condition stuff, not only are they getting sealed games, they're getting like the nicest sealed games. And so like, yes, the good complete in box stuff is out of the market, but all the crazy people thinking about this are only buying sealed stuff. So if you, I think that gives you maybe more time to buy nicer complete in box stuff, or like, I don't see a future where the nice Super Mario RPG costs 10 times as much as the average Super Mario RPG, which could be the case if you're looking at a trading card or a comic book. The thing that's going to cost 10 times as much or 100 times as much is going to be the sealed copy. And so like that doesn't perfectly correlate to a lot of other collecting hobbies, because, you know, we have complete in box that goes like okay, goes to good, goes to great, goes to excellent, and then it goes to sealed, and it's just on like another universe. And then like sealed gets stratified out too. It's just like, it's a very different curve than a comic book, which goes from like, it goes 5.0 to 6.0 to 7.0 to 8.0 to 9.0 to 9.8. And it's like, there's some bell curve to the condition of copies, but there's no sealed comic book that turns it into like another stratosphere of value and rarity and conditional rarity.
Yeah, in comics, it's more the conditional rarity. Once, like in old comics, the difference between anything that's at a 9.6 and a 9.8 versus lower than that.
And I guess something to be careful about because of this, I don't know if this is unique to video games, but it's certainly different from comics and cards. Some people will say like, whoa, this Fable on Xbox is a historic Xbox game, and there's only 37 graded copies of Fable out there. The problem is like 99.9% of people who ever look back at Xbox and be like, oh yeah, Fable, I want to play Fable, they're going to buy a complete in box copy for $11. They're not going to be like, oh, there's only 37 graded copies of Fable, because most people do not care about sealed games. There is a perfectly fine substitute for sealed games, and that is a game.
Yes.
So it's just a weird thing with the sealed market being completely separate.
True.
So
True,
so you look at like these population reports of games and you're like, whoa, there's 10,000 graded Charizards, but you look at Super Mario Brothers 3 and there's only 700 of them. Yeah, because almost everybody is going to buy a complete in box copy of Super Mario Brothers 3. It is not an equivalent thing.
It's almost better to look at toys like a loose toy versus like a mint on card toy.
I guess, but like a complete in box game, you still have the full thing. Like if I have every insert in Super Mario 3, it's still the thing. It's just missing shrink wrap.
Yeah, I'm more in the like the difference in price. I'm saying like, sure. Okay, this like, or like if you just went cart only and you're like, oh my God, this is the cart and versus this, this loose toy. But loose toys still have that. Like, oh, it's a loose figure, but it's a loose figure with all of its stuff and still has the card back. This goes for X amount of dollars, whereas the one that's still sealed goes for quadruple that, and then the one that's just a loose figure without its weapons or anything goes for, a third of what that complete one goes for. Anyways, there are some parallels, but nothing is perfect, and video games also have multiple components, which makes it harder. Video games are a different animal. There are things you can look at to gain ideas and understanding of how it works, but nothing is a perfect one-to-one. Don't let anyone tell you that there is.
Yeah, also, I want to put a point on how small the sealed game collecting market is when you're looking at like prices of complete in box versus sealed. Like, there are so few people in this market and no one has any idea what's going on. Games can swing in price like $100,000. Games that were worth like $300 max 5 years ago will swing up to like $144,000 and then back to $15,000. Like, nothing makes sense. If you're trying to crunch this data as if it's real and as if it means anything, you are going to be led astray. You can be like, wow, the market for Tecmo Bowl is really down compared to its $144,000 high. It's because there never was a market for Tecmo Bowl. It's just a couple weird, crazy guys that are like having a speculating marathon on like what they think might hit it big. It's crazy. All the prices are crazy.
Remember, like, when all this was happening and people like, I was fighting with people like, oh, you don't understand market trends. And I'm like, I don't think you understand what a trend is, because 1 month doesn't make a trend. 2 month is not a trend line. Like, I used to say this, like, we don't have enough information in video games. We don't have a long enough history to like really understand what's going on. And this is like during the COVID times when everything was exploding. Everyone's like, everything's going up to the moon. I'm like, we don't, like, this is unprecedented. We don't know what's going on. And if you look at that, we still don't. So things are going to get sorted out. But like right now is kind of the worst time to try and analyze, especially the sealed market. It's a good time to start looking at the CIB market and seeing what it does as people start to grade those games and kind of look at where trends start to develop. But know that, we're going to be in this wild place where it seems like there's a lot of information, but there's not enough historical context yet. We haven't lived in this kind of timeline long enough to fully grasp what is happening with the trends, to understand and make good, solid choices and say, okay, from a data standpoint, this is what I expect to always be happening. We're not there, and things have shifted quite a bit in the last couple of years. So things, as Tyler said, are sketchy. And those seemed like extreme examples where a game sold for 100,000 and then for 15,000. That's true. These are real things that happen. There are people who just got pantsed completely on these pseudo investments. And will it recover? Will they go back up to 100? I don't know. Again, we haven't lived in this kind of timeline long enough. Will more investors come in? Will crypto ever rebound? There's definitely a tie between cryptocurrency and video game markets and other collectible markets. So there's a lot of factors out here which are outside of gaming deciding what the prices of games are. So just be very careful. Be very careful if you think you're an investor, but also if you think that the data is real. Like, have an understanding. Like we just said, do your research and know what the prices are so you can see what the deals are. But know that, like, especially on sealed stuff, that it's wild out there. CIB is a lot more stable. Cart is way more stable, like cart only. But sealed, it's completely unstable territory, and I would be very, very, very cautious and actually just avoid. My advice would be to avoid that, but that's me. At least for old stuff.
Sure. I think broadly, most people are just going to avoid it naturally because they look at it and they're like, Carl Jobs told me this was a scam, so I'm just going to buy complete in box games. But also, like, we're talking about buying the good stuff, like the games you want, like Super Mario RPG, trying to be very topical this episode. Like a sealed Super Mario RPG is like $8,000 or something. So you know what? Most people are going to spend it on a complete in box version.
Yeah, which you can get between, like I said, between $300 and $500. Yeah, it was, when you said you pulled that price out of thin air, you did a good job.
All right. One might say I look at a lot of video games, Johnny.
Yeah.
I want to make one final point that is probably more relatable to most people listening to a podcast who, I don't know, do rich investor people listen to podcasts by stupid collectors? I don't think
definitely
so. cartridge versus complete in box. Johnny, I was a cartridge collector for a very long time, and kind of the only reason I switched to complete in box was because I literally bought every single cartridge I ever wanted, and I'm like, well, I gotta go somewhere from here.
We shamed you.
You didn't shame me, because people have been shaming me my entire collecting career for buying cartridges, but I only stopped once I literally had like all the NES games, Game Boy games, Super Nintendo games that I already wanted, which was all of the American ones. But cartridges are a bad deal. They're simply a bad deal, like 90% of the time, not every time. Like, I understand the difference between Castlevania might be $25 versus $300. And like, okay, I understand. You don't want to spend, you need a Castlevania in your collection because it's freaking Castlevania, but you don't want to spend $300 and it's not like a top priority for you. I understand buying a cartridge of Castlevania. But when we're talking about most games, historically, cartridges are in the complete in box is like 2 to 3 times more expensive than a cartridge. And the rarity of having a complete in box game in a cardboard box is so much higher than 2 to 3 times more rare. It is just always worth it to buy the boxed game. It'll be easier to sell. It'll hold more value. I understand that video game collecting is not entirely about value, but the collecting value of a complete in box game is more than 3 times the collecting value of a cartridge. I understand you can have way, way more cartridges. I think in almost every case, you'll be happier having a third as many complete in box games.
I agree. Also, one of the things we do is we start to talk about the disparity between like what the cart price is versus like what a CIB is. And that's another area that I'll just touch on real quick. So a lot of times you'll look at a complete in box game, that has you've got the cart, at the very minimum, you've got the cart, the manual, and the box, right? Hopefully, if you've got a poster or an insert in there too, the disparity gets even further. But you'll be like, oh, this cart is like $40, but the complete in box one is $90. That the ratios don't add up because all the parts that are harder to find are more rare than the cartridge. Like the cartridge is the easiest part to find. So those other components should be taking up more value. And individually, if they're sold, they usually do. But complete games, like complete in box games, if you have to buy a manual for $50 and a cart for $40 and a box for $30, you will sometimes still find the complete in box game for $90 is what I'm telling you. So the price of the individual components a lot of times is still greater. So don't do the cart thing and be like, I'll just pick up the other stuff later. One, you will probably mismarry your parts, which means that games are pretty specific. Like there's a lot of variants, which we'll touch on later. So you might buy like a box that has a circle seal and then a cartridge that has an oval seal, and those aren't properly married. That's not the right part. The right game is not in the right box. The title is correct, but you've messed up along the way. So don't make that mistake. Buy complete in box is my general rule. Like unless you're just like solidly always going to be a cart only person and be fine with it. Cool. That's your prerogative. Go do what you like. But just know that there are pitfalls to that, and working from cart to complete and trying to piecemeal it together is a bad idea.
Yeah, 100%. And you know what? I think this has actually become less of a problem over time because as time marches on, Johnny, less people care about Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
Less people care about N64. People start collecting PS2 and PS3, and I see tons of collections. They're just Xbox 360, PS3 games, just like shelves and shelves of this stuff, and like they don't have cardboard boxes. So like no one's gonna buy disc-only Xbox 360 games. So a lot of people I think just go into complete in box collecting as the default now.
Yeah, here, you want a quick horror story?
Sure.
Most Wii games, well, I won't say most, but there's a large swath of Wii games that have the wrong disc to the wrong case. And this is because of GameStop. Because
GameStop screwed up everything for disc collectors. Good luck, guys.
Yes. So here's what GameStop did with discs. They took all the discs out and they put them in these horrible yellow bags, which scratched up your games. It was like, I don't know what trash idea this was. I think it was born out of PC games from like 2000 and like 1995 to 2000. What a horrible idea this was, that you would put your very sensitive discs in these horrible paper sleeves. Anyways, they did this for all their games so you wouldn't so they could leave them on the shelves and people wouldn't steal them. The problem is, multiple variations of that disc would come out. Like, so it might be like, oh, this was the 5th revision of this game, but they don't know that and they don't care. And why would they? They just put the 5th revision in the first print case and then they sold it to you. So with the Wii, this was especially bad because they changed a lot of the third-party discs, went from like color prints to black and white prints or mirror prints pretty quickly. And you may never know if you have the right one, and no one has ever tracked it. So finding out exactly what's right and if you've got the right pieces will be difficult forever.
Yeah, and so that's really the problem. The problem isn't that GameStop put the third print disc of Monster Hunter Tri on the Wii U in the first print case. The problem is no one knows the print variants of freaking Monster Hunter Tri on the Wii U. And the way that you would normally research this is you go on eBay and you just look at 1,000 listings and you kind of like figure out what the consensus is. But GameStop, in terms of discs, have messed up everything in the used game market, so you kind of can't do that anymore because they've just screwed up everything. I mean, who cares about which disc print of Monster Hunter Tri in the Wii U you have? But if you are getting really into like the deep depths of Collector's Quest weirdo research, that is kind of a problem.
It is a problem. All right.
I will give one more hot tip.
Ooh.
For people who do want to collect complete in box games, but they're gonna collect the cartridges because they're like, I'm not spending $82 on Magic of Scheherazade. No one cares about that game except for that one guy on Collector's Quest and the guy in his Discord who also was like, yeah, you guys mentioned that game. I love when you mentioned that game. Johnny, that's an $82 game complete in box.
Hot.
The only reason anyone would ever buy that is probably they're collecting an NES set. But you could get the cartridge for $20. But there is another option to get a complete in box version of this game. One might call it the real version of this game, the original version of this game, Magic of Scheherazade Arabian Dream on the Famicom. Johnny, that is $6.73 complete in box.
Oh, nice.
So you can get the complete in box Famicom version of an NES game for a third the price of the cartridge. That's not always, but you look at like Super Mario Brothers. Like you want like a decent Super Mario Brothers, you're probably spending $300 to $500 now.
Hey.
Or you go to Japan, you get complete in box $40 all day. They're just like all over the place because it's one of the most common games ever. And they haven't like bought them all out and made the market into nonsense.
Let me keep it topical. We were talking about Super Mario RPG. Hey, you can pick up a Super Mario RPG just like the Japanese one, Super Famicom, on eBay. Not even the best place to buy Japanese games. You can get that for $40 or like complete in box, nice. Or you can go spend $300 to $500.
Yeah. Chrono Trigger, $20. You can get Super Mario World for $20. Yeah. If you want complete in box game, like if you, I obviously love Japanese games, but they're not as completely worthless as they were maybe 5 or 10 years ago. But the prices compared to American prices are just obscene still. Like Earthbound in America is like $3,000. Mother 2 in Japan is like $11.
So did we did the episode How to Shop for Games in Japan, right?
I don't remember.
Oh.
Yeah, I think we did at some point.
Did we just talk?
Get a ZenMarket account, zenmarket.jp. Look up it does like an automatic translation when you search for games. You probably could search for Super Mario RPG. Don't do that. Go to the Wikipedia article for Super Mario RPG. Scroll to the bottom. It'll have like the real Japanese title of the game. Do a search for that on Yahoo Japan. That'll get you better results.
Yep. Or on ZenMarket, they have like an aggregate where you can check their Mercari site and Yahoo. It's great. Use that.
So for our conditional section, Johnny, the main tip is just forget about everything you like and buy Japanese games because they're cheaper, right?
No.
And also buy the PC versions of, like, if there's an expensive game that you want, it might be on PC for $6. Just get the PC version.
I mean, or it might be a rare PC game and be $6,000.
What rare PC game is $6,000?
There's a bunch of dumb horror games.
No one is buying those in place of console games, though. No one's like, oh, I don't want to buy Silent Hill 2 on the PS2. Let me buy it on the PC.
Well, maybe they don't. I do.
All right. Johnny, you put a whole new section into this episode.
No, I didn't.
Oh, really? Did I put this section in?
Yeah, you put this here, and I just added this word on the end of it.
Okay. Johnny, variants. We've
touched on this quite a bit, but yeah, tell me about variants.
We're up our butts about video game variants. You might look at a copy of Super Mario World. That's a bad example because that's a really weird game. You might look at a copy of A Link to the Past and be like, well, they sold 6 million copies, but a copy of Link to the Past is a copy of Link to the Past. But if you look at the seal of quality, see if there's a TM that turned into an R. You look at the PCBs, you open up the cartridge, there's different date codes. Maybe they changed a logo or an address or
added
a warranty
rating
box on the box.
Added ratings to the games.
Added ratings. It changed from like kids to adults to ESRBE. This is, we're off Link to the Past at this point. But
no, there was an ESRB change on Link to the Past.
Okay. Anything can be a variant. Like if something changed in a box or a cartridge or a manual, sure, it's a variant. You don't have to ask, like, does this count as a variant? Yeah, anything counts as a variant. Do people care about this variant? The answer is almost always no. There are a very few variants that people actually do care about that either get big premiums. You look at NES games have the black box sticker sealed versions, which are now worth, usually hundreds or thousands of dollars. Or you look at like greatest hits PS2 games where most people are like, I don't want that ugly red label on my thing. So those take a price hit. But the vast majority of video games have hundreds of variants all the time, and no one really cares about them.
Yeah, and there are different categories of variants. There are major variants. Like you might get a game like Zombies Ate My Neighbors. There is just the traditional box on the Super Nintendo, and then there's this other weird box. So you will get like a game will get a complete art swap, and you're like, "What happened here?" Or on Sega CD, Wonder Dog, the red box versus Wonder Dog, green box. So this is like a big variant. That is like, oh my god, everything changed. But a lot of these variants, we're talking about an ESRB change, an address for the company on the back because they moved. Like these are minor variants, and most of the time people don't care, and it doesn't really affect the premium.
And so it doesn't affect the premium. And the important thing is, one, you don't have to care about variants. We just we look at the same games all the time, so we have to find a way to make it interesting, is basically why we care about variants so much. I don't even think like comic collectors care about variants this much. You look at some of the most expensive comics ever sold, and it'll be like the later printings of the desirable book. So like the most expensive Marvel Comics 1 ever sold is the second printing of that book. Because it came out in 1939. It's like November 1939 versus October 1939. They don't really care. They're spending $1 million on that book. But no one knows anything about variants. That's the interesting thing about variants is like you can go and find variants for your favorite game, and like you don't need to worry about Googling it or trying to ask an expert or feeling like you're out of the loop. If your favorite game is Portal, like it released originally in the orange box on PC and Xbox 360, maybe PS3, I don't remember.
Yes.
Don't go to a Facebook group and ask someone like, hey guys, what are the interesting, rare, or first variants of the orange box? Like potentially you'll get an answer for that. But most people just don't know. Like who's ever thought to track orange box variants? It's just not a thing. Like people have done that with NES games very in detail. But doing this for modern games or like even like recent, decently modern games like Orange Box, it's just not a thing. So this is your chance to go to eBay and you just type in Orange Box for 3 months straight. Just look at every single box front and back and just try to document every single change you see. You will eventually be able to piece together a timeline because like usually things will change like one at a time. And you'll be able to piece together a timeline of different variants of the Orange Box. And you'll see like, oh, the box started out as orange and it went to black on PC. And maybe this address on the back of the box changed from this to this. And you'll be able to figure out which address came first. And like, if you talk to someone who's already into this, who's already done the research, it might seem like, oh my God, people already know so much about the Orange Box. Like I'll never be able to get all this knowledge in my head. No one knows shit about anything. If you're talking to a guy who seems to know all these things, it's because he just went on eBay and searched it all up and made a list and like figured it out himself probably.
Yeah.
And that's what makes game collecting so fun. If you have a game that no one cares about, Riven on PC, I mean, people kind of care about Riven. There's a good chance you won't find a great variant guide for Riven, but it's very easy and fun to go make one yourself. And then you could find like maybe the first print is rare and it's undiscovered, quote unquote, and people don't know what it is and there's no price premium. And that's a good way to go get an interesting game for 0 price premium. Or you find like a rare version of Riven that also has 0 price premium because people basically don't know it exists. It's a really good way to find interesting games.
Yeah, so if I was going to ask about variants, I would never ask about a specific game unless I was talking to the right people. There are certain people that I would trust. But what I would do, especially if I was collecting for one specific system, is I would go into a group and I would say, hey, can you tell me the type of variants that this system has? Like just in broad general, so I know kind of what I'm looking for and what I can piece together. And then I can see what falls outside of that so I can build a complete history. So that's a better way to be more circumspect about, like, if you're going to ask people this, because if, like Tyler said, if you just ask them about one certain game, most people don't know. There are some people out there who it is their literal job, Dan Gomez, to go out and look at these variants and like create histories, but there aren't that many people. And, half the people I wouldn't trust to do good research anyways. So, just be cautious. But Tyler's right. There's a lot. Tyler and I have both found lots and lots of dumb variants that exist and put them in our collections and feel so proud of ourselves and be like, look at this cool game. I didn't pay any more than any other game, but look at this dumbass variant I have. And it's very pleasing when you're like, I'm like one of 4 people who has this dumb variant. Isn't this neat?
Or like you're one of 4 people who have it and they know they have it. Because everyone who does have it doesn't actually know they have the cool version.
Yes, true.
We are in this weird world where video games, especially sealed, but certain video games have really jumped up in price. And we're kind of in this knowledge economy where the more you know, the better deals you can get. So not everyone is going to want to share their knowledge with everyone. There are some amazing collectors out there like Joe who will just spend hours of his time searching NES prices on eBay and then post that all to videogamesage.com. But I think most people who do this kind of research don't publish what they know. So if someone has done the Riven PC big box research, they're probably, if they find out like the first print is super rare and has like a really distinctive thing about it, I mean, who's speculating on Riven? But they might keep that to themselves because either they want to buy all the first prints for themselves or it just doesn't come up and they need to keep that information to themselves so they can go buy that copy whenever they want to. Maybe they don't have the money or it's not a priority right now. So there is this concept of people having secret spreadsheets in video game collecting where they don't share all their knowledge. Maybe that's another interesting thing about video games because that doesn't really exist in coins or comics. As far as I know, it might. But there are so many amazing published catalogs of like coins or like comics. You could find the first print or the first appearance of anything just by looking through all these databases, even like Go Collect or whatever that price guide is. And that just doesn't exist for games. Like a lot of the hot information is kind of distributed ad hoc through Facebook groups, and a lot of it is just like secret spreadsheets that individual collectors have compiled for their own benefit.
True. It is a little bit more Kabbalistic in the way that video game information is stored. Though we here on the Collector's Quest try to spread the knowledge as far as we can.
I talk about games I want on. I have a podcast that thousands of people listen to, and I'm just like, this is the cool variant of this game. I sure hope I get it one day.
We have both thrown our stuff out there and been burned by it, and we will continue to do so.
We're getting off topic here. I'm going to go off topic. I have tracked Angry Video Game Nerd episodes, so I looked at the price history of games that the Angry Video Game Nerd has done games on. So like right when he drops an episode. And I've tracked to see if like anyone buys like a rare or interesting game. What's one of them that was really interesting? The stupid 3DO game. Plumbers Don't Wear Ties. He did an episode on that. And like usually on eBay, there's like 3 copies of Plumbers Don't Wear Ties at a time. It's like, it's not a super rare game, but it's a pretty uncommon game. There's only going to be so many copies and probably one at a time is going to be 100% nice and complete. So he dropped an episode of Plumbers Don't Wear Ties. It gets like, it's an Angry Video Game Nerd episode, 400,000 views in the first day. And not a single one of those people went and bought the reasonably priced copy of Plumbers Don't Wear Ties. Which made me really think about, like, people talk about, like, oh, the Metal Jesus effect. Metal Jesus talks about a game and it shoots up in price. I don't know how big, like, I don't think we have an impact on the market, obviously, but I think even some big YouTubers might not have as big an impact as some people claim they do.
So Metal Jesus, like some of those people do have effect, because one angry video game nerd, he's not necessarily talking to collectors. He's talking to people who just enjoy games. Metal Jesus is usually talking directly to collectors. Do we affect the market? Like maybe in a very short term way, but not in anything long term. Like a lot of times we'll say, hey, there's this cool game on eBay, go buy it. And it'll be purchased if there's a good one out there, but we're usually being specific.
Yeah. I will say there's a cool game on eBay, and then 100% of the time VG Collectaholic will go buy it.
Yeah, but it's also good. Like if you were in this category of people, like it's good to know who you're competing against, so you can like just message each other. This used to happen on Nintendo Age and stuff. Like people just met each other because they kept fighting over the same items in auctions. So it was like they just started meeting each other and talking about it, and thus Nintendo forums were born.
Oh yes, so that's true. That's a reason that we got like Nintendo Age and stuff. This is kind of off topic. Form buyer cartels. Everyone if you have a super niche interest, I'm sorry if you're a seller of something super niche, but I have a couple groups of guys I talk to, and we have like the same interest in Japanese games. So if some rare PC-88 game comes up that I know someone might want, or more likely, I don't know, like a really nice complete in box Famicom game that I know people are looking at, we determine like kind of in advance, like, is anyone bidding on this? Because I don't want to bid against anyone. Keep the prices down, right? Like if you know that there's only 2 people that are in the world that are going to bid on what's a stupid game, Go Directory,
Donkey Kong
Famicom.
3, Donkey Kong 2.
Perfect. Yeah, so I just bought Donkey Kong 3 Great Counterattack for the PC-88. It's a Nintendo PC-88 game, very rare, very obscure.
I want one.
If I was like, I probably know like 3 people who might potentially want that. So I would make sure like, hey, don't bid $1,000 on this. Like, let me have this one. You can have the next one. Like, I don't know. But it doesn't always work like that. If you get the groups too big, people are just going to bid against you anyway. But if it's people you have like an actual interpersonal relationship with, try not to bid against them. Screw those sellers. You know what? Maybe people don't like that if they're like in like the investment market and they're like, stop trying to keep the prices down on my games. But I think we can all agree that like faceless Japanese superstores, we can keep the prices down on those, and that doesn't hurt anyone. So I don't know.
Also, this is something we say a lot here. Be patient. Most of these games aren't rare gems that will never show up again. There's going to be more. So don't get into a bidding war with someone like and overinflate the price. This goes back to one, having your list, knowing what the price is, and knowing not to like go over market unless it's like the best condition one. Like fight for the best condition one. But if it's just like an average condition one, you know it's going to come back up. Like don't fight over a copy of The Last of Us. Just wait for the next one. There's going to be more. So these are mass produced items. Don't kill each other. There are some games like that Donkey Kong, which is rare. And that's where Tyler's talking about how like having these buyer cartels works, where you can not fight each other. Like, oh, I'm looking at this one. Is no one else? Cool. Then I'll stay out of your way. You're looking at that one. Because even with that game, there's going to be another one. And there's only so many people who are fighting for it. So try to stay out of each other's way. Try to be a little bit patient. And know who your competition is. And then just be friends with them. It's way better than taking out like, you know, a blood oath against them and fighting financially to the death with them.
Yeah. I'm into it. I mean, I don't know how it's not going to work if you collect like complete in box NES games because too many people are in the market. But if you're in something like really niche, like find your people.
Yeah. For complete in box Nintendo stuff, that's more of the like, just stay patient, don't overbid because there's going to be more.
Yeah. And Johnny, talking about rare games again, Nintendo World Championships, there's like there's like 90 known copies now, 91 known copies. Traditionally, like one of the rarest and most desirable Nintendo cartridges, seen as a holy grail of video game collecting. Multiple copies come up for sale every year now. new ones are still found. Like even something as rare as that was handmade, like there's a bunch of them. They come up for sale. Almost nothing will come up for sale once. You will have more chances to buy virtually any video game. There's almost no need to FOMO on anything as if it's the last time it'll ever come up.
Yep. Okay. I think that covers our variant stuff. And I think that segues perfectly into the don't get caught up in FOMO section of this article, Tyler. Let's talk about that. I said article, but a podcast.
All right. My first point was talking about Rule of Rose and Sculptor's Cut. Go on eBay. Look up Sculptor's Cut cartridges and Rule of Rose. Stop paying ridiculous prices for these ridiculous games. Johnny, my second point, limited run games is the biggest Nintendo Switch and PS4 game publisher. They are the biggest one.
They're all limited.
In a certain sense, they make the most common games for the PS4 and the Switch. So what are you doing? Stop buying these limited run games as if they're limited. You're crazy. The guys running this, they came up with the perfect business model. Because like for a year or two at the beginning of their business, they made genuinely limited games. They're like, we're making 2,900 of this version of this game for the Nintendo. It wasn't Switch because they didn't do Switch yet. For like the PS3 or something. And people would be like, you'd have to like be there right when it dropped. You'd have to have your phone number saved to your clipboard to paste it directly into the form because you didn't have time to type your phone number before like a hot thing might sell out. But now this pre-order model, they're just a game publisher. A lot of game publishers just make a big run of games and that's it. They just make like these niche little games. They come out all the time. Not every game is Super Mario Wonder. I'm sorry. We harp on limited run stuff a lot, but I just want to.
I mean, well, they're just kind of they're the poster child for the thing that is happening. It's not even specific about them because now they're just like you said, just a game publisher. But they created the model, kind of, and so they just have to wear it. They just have to wear this badge and take the brunt, even if it's not always fair.
All right, that is true. The other thing I want to bring up again, Johnny, video game collecting is a small hobby. You look at the average video game and it's worth less than what it sold for new. And I would say if you were coming up with a definition of a collectible, one of the defining characteristics of a collectible would be that it's worth more than it was worth new. Because if something is worth less than it was worth new, that is just a used product. Most things are worth less than what they were worth new. And I think
yes.
Like 90% of video games, even like complete in box NES games to a large extent, are worth less than they were worth new. And you start accounting for like inflation, and that's even a bigger number. But let me look at Vegas Dream. I'm just looking at my shelf now. Vegas Dream. Crystalis. Crystalis is like, people put that in like the top 10 of NES games. Maybe it's like a top 25 NES game. Crystalis is worth less now, complete in box, than it was worth in, 1989 or whatever.
And this is not even considering inflation. Okay, I'll go back to, I brought up Hatris, right? So you can go buy a copy of Hatris complete for about $70. So I think it probably cost about $55 new in like 1992, 1990. It was a later game. So that 1990s money going a lot further. Like it's going to be a lot more expensive than the $60 or so, $60 to $80 you're going to spend on Hatris right now. So
okay. All right.
It was not an investment product. It's just a used item. It did not increase in value. And we're talking about CIB Nintendo games. And this is a CIB Nintendo game that was kind of end of life cycle of it. And not that many were made.
And like, I'm bringing up CIB Nintendo because like you would traditionally think of that as being the most collectible thing to have is.
Yeah. It's like the foundational collecting system.
Yes. Also, I'm wrong on Crystalis. I think of Crystalis still as like a $30 game. Apparently, someone in March 2022 paid $126 for a complete box copy of Crystalis. So now Crystalis is like a $75 game complete in box, which I'm sure, accounting for inflation, that's still
less.
Worth less than it was. But like, man,
yes.
Crystalis is $75 now. I guess it is officially collectible though.
Also, if you buy Hatris, make sure you get the one with the poster. Okay.
Shut up. But yes. Get the one with the poster. I don't have Hatris. I might have.
I'm sorry. Am I inflating the market on Hatris for you?
Yes, you are. It's new from the creator of Tetris, Johnny.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, bud.
All right, Johnny, I want to talk about the death of physical media, and everything's going to zero and we're all going to die. Just going back to like, just because you like something and it's worth money doesn't make it an investment. The future of video games is a very weird thing, because kids today grow up and they don't buy physical video games and then play them with a controller. The most popular thing, like, kids play iPads, kids play phone games, kids play touch screens. And if they do play like real, quote unquote, real video games, it's like Roblox, it's like Fortnite. There are these platforms where there's things to purchase within them, like Fortnite skins or Robux or like Minecraft coins. I don't even know what Minecraft coins do. The generation growing up has like, it's not just different game consoles and different genres. It's like an entirely different way of interacting with video games, and even like interacting with computers as technology. Like, they are totally different. I think there's a really good chance that generation grows up and does not give one shit about physical PS2 games. Even if they love video games, even if they love like quote unquote real video games from real genres, like the concept of putting a disc into a console is just not something they relate to. It's Lionel trains to them. It is just like this completely foreign thing. It is taking a CD and putting it into a CD player rather than streaming it on Spotify.
I agree with you, but I hope it becomes more like vinyl collecting, where like most of these games will be digital in the future, but there will be like these boutique releases that people are into, and then the kids are like, oh man, look at this old physical thing. Isn't this sweet? That's my hope.
I kind of think that's the best case scenario. Like, we know there have been leaks for Microsoft is they're planning to release a console in 2028 without a disk drive. And like, obviously,
and I'm for it.
We know everything is the physical media is dying. There's no way that they're going to keep putting out these discs that do literally nothing except give you a way to sell used games, because you're downloading the entire game from the internet anyway when you put a disc in these days. And if we turn into the vinyl market and like every town has like their vinyl record store, that would be amazing. Because right now we're stuck with GameStop, and GameStop is terrible. Is it GameStop or Spot? GameStop. Like, they're terrible for a number of reasons. Not the least of which is like the oldest game you can get at a GameStop is like Nintendo Wii. And if we went to the record store model, like a record store stocks everything from every generation. They stock music, whereas GameStop stocks newer video games. And I would love to get back to a world where I could go and buy retro video games locally.
Okay, well, GameStop is not for collectors. Don't listen to whatever they say. It's for people who play games, whereas record store is for both.
Yes. Okay, yeah, you're right. And I think you're right that we're going to go into this world where, like, I mean, some artists now put out, like, legitimate vinyl releases because it's the cool thing to do. But, like, largely it's special edition vinyl releases that are driving the market, limited run games type stuff.
And that's fine.
And I think that's going to be the market going forward. But it's kind of the best case scenario, because the worst case scenario is, like, we get a little bit of that, but, like, the way people have interacted with technology growing up in the modern generation is just so different that, like, physical video games drop off. And that's why, like, I'm not one of these, like, anti-investor people. Like, if you want to speculate on games, I think games are the coolest thing in the fucking world. But I think there's a strong possibility of a generation growing up with zero attachment to any of this, which is a reason not to get caught up in the FOMO of things like the sealed game market.
Yes. Agree. The world is going to change, and I'm not exactly sure what it's going to look like. I'm always curious whether, like, Nintendo was going to try and, like, keep the physical train going for too long, and then it's going to be weird, or if they will just get off it completely. I hope we go to the vinyl world model, but there's a chance that we don't, or that, like, Sony and Microsoft and Nintendo get together, and because they're, like, bad at things, they will just create an alternate model to this where it'll be like, we're selling game cases with just codes in them, so you can still go buy the physical thing, and then it's just a bunch of people collecting physical boxes with that is basically just a case for their video game code, and I hate that world.
It is going to be so set. So, oh man, I see that model happening, because, like, they want to maintain their shelf space at Walmart or whatever, because, like, they have this amazing section at Walmart, and there's going to be, like, this group of hangers on, like, no, you don't understand, like, Xbox X Series XXX, this is still collectible because there's still a physical product here, and they're going to have their collection of like 90 cases that are all empty.
He just said Xbox Triple X.
I mean, what? It's gonna be something stupid, right?
That's wonderful. I'm here for when they finally break down and call it the Xbox Triple X. But you're right. The Josh Byerlys of the world are gonna be stuck being like, you don't understand. These are still games. Look, if a disc is nothing now and it just actually contains code on it to create a download prompt, then this card is exactly the same thing, isn't it? It's a physical piece of media and it's still in a box. It is still the game. These arguments are going to be made and I'm not here for them.
I'm not throwing Josh Byerly under the bus. So
I think
Josh.
Josh knows what he is and he's fine with it. And I told you, I love collectors. I love all brand of nonsense. I want to see all the weirdos. Show me your collection of just manuals. Sure. Whatever you got. Show me your collection of gift cards. I'm here for it.
I think if the Xbox X Series XXX, if they have space at Walmart selling those stupid cases with download codes, I think by default, some amount of people will collect those. And I think Josh is really interested in the stuff that just like is garbage that no one collects, like Minecraft gift cards and Roblox Robux cards. Like, what's the first print of a Roblox Robux card? This is like a huge game, multi-billion-dollar game, played by like something that kids will be definitely nostalgic for because like millions of people play it. There's probably not like a single collector on Earth who knows what the first print of a Roblox gift card is.
And if there is, it's Josh Byerly.
And if there is, like, yeah, he's going after that shit because he's like, yeah, this is the shit that no one has.
Well, and this goes back to basic collecting, right? So if you're a smart collector, you're not looking at limited run games, which says collector's edition on everything, right? Though by the minute it says collector's edition on it, it's not collectible, kind of. So like, how do we target what became collectible? It was the stuff that no one was thinking about collecting. It was the stuff that was just kind of for kids or whatever. And then people had nostalgia for it and then went back to it after it had already passed through the trough of no value and like was just pushed into the rubbish bins. And then people were like, no, we need to resurrect this. We need to bring this back. I want to collect these. And then other people bought into that idea, and then thus a collectible was born. Star Wars figures, comics, baseball cards, all this stuff came from an era of it was all trash to now it's a collectible. We're in an era where everything is, these are collectibles already, so you better keep them because they're all collectibles, which means they aren't.
Which means now they're trash.
Right. So Josh Byerlys of the world are looking at these things within this space that people are going, these aren't collectible, these are trash, hoping for that moment to come back and be like, these were all the ones that people threw away, but aha, I was out in front of this and it is a collectible and I have it.
I mean, he doesn't even have to hope for it to come back. He could just be excited that he has the thing.
Yeah, I mean,
no one else has some of the stuff he collects.
No, he's not out there just because he's like, the investment, haha, twirling his mustache or anything. Like he likes this kind of stuff. So that's why like talking to Josh is fascinating. He's into a bunch of dumb variants just like I am. Josh is one of my favorite people to talk to about dumb variants. We go hard in all the dumb shit. It's great.
Roblox gift cards, just to be clear, we're talking to maybe some new collectors. Roblox gift cards are perhaps not the best investment for you to make.
Whoa, we aren't advising investing anyways.
No, we're advising everyone here, Gianni.
Yeah. All right. We got anything else to say about FOMO?
Don't FOMO. That's why you have goals, so you don't have to FOMO.
Right. So let's talk about a thing you should do once you've got that list. And we did talk about this very briefly, but just to mention it again, hey guys, set a budget. I'm telling you, it's so easy to get caught up in a new world of exciting collectibles. You just got here. You're like, all these games are amazing and I could just go buy everything. Boy, you're going to hurt yourself. Just please relax a minute, write down what games cost and then set your budget and then work from there. So what do you have to say about budgets, Tyler? I mean, we've got a little list here, but
I mean, it's hopeless. If someone has just decided to collect video games, I don't think we're going to be like, wait, before you buy stuff, think about it and plan your purchases correctly. They're just going to be like, oh my God, God of War is only $5. Mass Effect 2 is $3. I'm just going to buy everything. And like, have your fun. Buying video games is fun. We love buying video games. But there comes a point where a lot of collectors become hoarders, Johnny. We know a lot, and we are hoarders.
Not hoarders.
And
we have an organizational system, and mine aren't on my staircase.
Okay. But it's very easy to get to a point where you're like, oh, I got an extra $500 in my bank account. I can immediately spend that $500 on video games right now.
Because video games
you always
are awesome.
want more stuff. You'll never have everything. You'll always want more stuff. It is so easy to spend literally 100% of your disposable income on video games if you don't prevent yourself from doing that. One of the best thing, first of all, like max out your 401k, make sure you've got like IRAs set up, like figure out all of your actual retirement stuff and savings. If you have a wife, dear God, figure out this shit with your spouse before you spend all of your disposable income on video games. One of the best things I did in terms of collecting, just because I see money just sitting in like my checking account and I'm like, oh, that's money. I could spend that money. I just have an automatic transfer that takes money out of my checking account and puts it into a Vanguard mutual fund. It just like literally like the majority of my disposable income now I just take and I throw it into the stock market just automatically, just so I can't see that I have extra money sitting there and go spend it. That's like a very financially healthy thing to do anyway. Just be like, oh yeah, I mean, build up like a mutual fund account and have that money grow, and then you have more money in the future. Is very nice. But yeah, getting money out of my checking account is super important to me personally. Maybe that's not how everyone operates, but if I woke up and I saw $5,000 in my checking account tomorrow, I'd be like, oh, what's going on the Heritage Signature auction? Maybe I can get something cool.
So first thing, well, like I'll slice it a little thinner than you, or a little thicker than you did. I like what you said. Yes, please talk to your spouse, like, especially if your video games can be an expensive hobby. So like make sure you're not doing anything weird or shady that might cause you fights with your spouse, because then your hobby won't be any fun and they won't buy in, and that'll just be the worst for you. But yeah, putting money aside and knowing that that's your video game money, this is your fun money, and not just bleeding your accounts dry. I'm not going to tell you how to invest all of your money properly. That's going to be for you and your financial advisor or just yourself to figure out. But not overdoing it on games and like having a plan is great. So I will tell you. So like we're going through all this, and I just started because I love collecting everything. I just started buying vinyl records. You know this, right, Tyler? I told you about this.
Yeah, you sure did.
Okay,
spooky ones.
So. I'm just going to tell you, as we get into the other section here, I'm going to tell you exactly what I did. So I specifically collect horror movie soundtracks, and there are some boutique companies that do this, and then there's some other general ones. So what I did is I aggregated a list of all horror movies, and then just horror movies or spooky Halloween. If you guys don't know what my collection actually is, I just collect video games and Halloween stuff. And that's what it is. And the Halloween stuff takes on different forms of media like records. So this is all part of that. So I got this aggregated list of all the horror movies, spooky movies, like scary kids movies, put that all in. And then I created my tier list of them, and I created my first tier. I said, this is what it is. And then I wrote down all the prices. And this is without consulting this episode, but you'll see I'm doing exactly what we said. I said, all right, here's all the prices. And then I just said, all right, so I have like $75 to $100 a month that I can spend on vinyl, and I can't do any more than that. And if I want to do more than that, I'll have to figure something else out. And that's just why I was like, I have the list. I don't need to buy it all now. It's going to just be a little adventure I get to enjoy. And then I can actually get the record, open it up, play it, hear the soundtrack. And I'm not overwhelming myself like the way I do with video games, where just, if you guys don't know, Tyler and I will sometimes, every year, I'll be interested to see if you did it this year, Tyler, have averaged more than 365 games a year.
Oh, there's no, I bet I didn't this year.
There's a good possibility I didn't either. So this might be the first year. But for years, we averaged more than 365 games a year, and sometimes a lot more. So that means on average, one game was showing up to our houses every single day, which is, there's no way to like super appreciate that. You're just in collecting mode and getting it on your shelves and organizing. So the way I'm doing this is as a curated collection and a very select group, and I'm also going to appreciate them a little. Not that I'm saying you have to go play your games. I already gave you permission just to put them on your shelf. But this gives me time. Like, it's not that I don't have more money, but it also gives me the time to like work through it and then just look at other stuff and like let it be a thing that I do for a little while and not just something I have to complete right now. So that budget is going to be good for that and good for you to give yourself some shelf life in this, because if you just go too hard, too fast and spend all of your money, you're going to burn out and it's not going to be fun. Keep it fun, keep it fresh, and like look forward to those little rewards once in a while, not every single day.
Johnny, I like gambling. I don't gamble almost ever, but I really like the concept of gambling. And I think that the dopamine rush of clicking buy it now on eBay is very similar to gambling and can be just as addicting, because if you're hunting for things like variants, you're going through like your 30 saved searches that you go through every day and you get a hit and it's like, whoa, there's that rare version of Riven I've been looking for. And you hit buy it now and you get the dopamine, and then it comes in the mail and you get another hit of dopamine, and you could just do that every day. And, and you're not thinking about your collection. You're just thinking about what's the next thing? How do I get more dopamine? And, you could just get addicted. It becomes shopping addiction at some point.
Yes.
Just
we talked about this. We have an episode about this very thing.
Yes.
Actually.
And it takes 6 seconds to buy something on eBay. And then when you realize that you fucked up and like you maybe bought things that you don't really need and you maybe didn't get like the right condition on something and like you need to sell it, it takes so much longer to sell something. You gotta take a picture of it, write the description, write the title, list multiple things at once. You gotta pack it up, ship it. You gotta make sure that you're keeping your shipping supplies in stock. 6 seconds compared to multiple minutes for every single individual thing that you have to sell, the turnaround and sell.
Yes, 100%. Just, I've said 100% a lot this.
100%.
Yep.
This is a 100% episode.
Yeah, thank you. But what you said is true. Like, just the mistake is harder. Walking it back is so much worse. Don't get caught up in it. Like I said, just make it a process that you can enjoy for longer. Tyler is right about that little dopamine hit, but so I'll just give you my for instance. And sometimes it's hard because you just think you see this deal and you're just like, it's hard to wait. Being patient is a virtue, and it is definitely a virtue in collecting. Knowing, but also having all the information to know when you should not wait. When like a $300 game comes up for $50, make sure you have the funds set aside that you can capitalize on that opportunity is another thing. Just so you don't, a good reason not to spend all of your money is so you can take advantage of stuff that is good deals when it's within your list anyways. But, Tyler, you know the movie Gremlins, I'm assuming, right? You're younger than me, but I'm assuming you know what Gremlins is.
It's a Christmas horror favorite.
Yeah. So Gremlins is great. Love Gremlins. Wanted the soundtrack. And there's a really cool vinyl soundtrack that was released by Mondo back in 2016 or something, 17. It's great. It was lovingly created. The record, or the the inner sleeve for it, if you get it wet, shows new art because you never get them wet, right? And if you expose the front cover to sunlight, directly to sunlight, it shows additional art, like it's sun sensitive, because don't expose them to bright light. Like this, whoever did this lovingly created this and thought about Gremlins and found a way to work it into the packaging. And it's great. It's fantastic. Love it. It was like, it was going for like $150 to $200. Like when I was like, man, this is amazing. I really want this coming up on Christmas. But I sat here for 3 months and waited and watched until I finally found an open auction and got one for $70. There was a lot of opportunities to buy it for $150, which was like at market. But I just kept telling myself, like, let's just like wait. We're not in that big a rush. Doesn't matter if we have it at Christmas. Like, let's just hold off and keep watching and keep waiting. And it eventually came around. And just all that to say, like, you can get very excited. I was very excited, especially when you see what this packaging does. I was so hot for this, Tyler. I was like, man, this is the coolest shit I've ever seen. I can't believe they did this. I want this so bad. I'm going to go. having to hold off and just like wait, and making yourself pay less, and it felt a lot better when I eventually did get to buy it for a good price rather than just jumping on what was available. So just
you certainly need to learn delayed gratification. I think that's a thing that a lot of financial advice like influencers will talk about.
So anyways.
Also, Johnny, I just want to say I'm going to call out your financial situation, Johnny. You are a financially established adult with like a wife, a house, and a child. I think there's a lot of game collectors who are perhaps like in college. Look at the state of saving money in the United States. Like, we are so fucked as an entire society. Like, the majority of people have like nothing saved for retirement, or like millennials and Gen Z have just like given up hope on ever affording a house because housing prices are friggin' ridiculous right now. And your way to like having a retirement savings or being able to save up a down payment for a house, the way to do that is not to buy video games that you think will be worth more in the future. It's certainly not to buy Pokemon cards or NFTs or any stupid crap like that. This is stupid crap. Like, you need to sort out your retirement and like how you're going to buy a house, how you're going to have a future, and not just put all of your money into video games. Because there is an end game for a lot of collectors, and the end game is like if they have like sort of an unestablished financial self right now, their end game is they just spend all their money on video games, and they never buy a house, they never have enough money to have a kid or whatever their actual financial goals are. And that's when we become like real sad, serious hoarders, where like we've made like serious mistakes in life. I do think a lot of collectors probably get there.
Yeah, I mean,
I think it's a serious problem.
Yeah, I mean, you and we both have the advantage of being well established at this point. You and your wife, dual income, no kids, you got expendable money. We are lucky to be in the situations we are in. But it wasn't always that way. Like, I been doing this for 20 years now, right? And I was a dumb kid out of college and like, at that first job and like trying to pay for rent and like trying to figure everything out, and then also buy video games. I know you were in that position too, and it can be overwhelming, and it can be hard to save, and it can be hard to make the right decisions. I'm not the person who always says save every bit of your money always, because that's going to get you farther in life. I believe you have to have some things that give you joy, like that bring you a little bit of joy. That doesn't mean be irresponsible. I definitely have been irresponsible in the past, and you have to like learn and work through that. But you have to. You have to make sure your life is progressing forward, because at the end of the day, video games, as we said, this is not an investment. This is like only spend money that I said you can literally afford to throw away. Like, don't make the decision like, well, I guess I won't eat tonight because I bought 3 video games. Like, don't do that.
I mean, there are people, I think this is maybe more of a phenomenon in the sealed market or like trading card markets, but like in 2021, like people were going into credit card debt buying video games, like speculative video games, which is just like that like gives me a panic attack. The idea of putting a video game on a credit card that you're like not planning on paying off immediately. Yeah. That's just like, there's some insane behavior out there. I think it's the most important thing to highlight. Well, I mean, let's wrap up this conversation about budgets, but like, if you have $100,000 worth of video games, that is like an entire universe of difference from having $100,000 in like the S&P 500 or $100,000 in a savings account. Like, that is not like a liquid thing that you can immediately turn around and get the full value out of in like 2 days. It's work, and it's risk, like the risk of fire, the risk of theft. I know you don't have your video games insured because almost no one has their video games insured.
Because it's almost impossible to do it, and even if you did, who knows if they would pay out.
Yeah.
So
it's just very different. So if you think you're like sitting on a nest egg of like $100,000 of video games, like if that's like the majority of your net worth is in video games, I would rebalance your life portfolio maybe.
Yes.
All right.
Let's talk about some others, and we'll wrap this up.
All right, Johnny, things to wrap up. I think we've mostly covered the points that I wanted to. I don't want to recap two things. Avoid incomplete games. I don't think saving a few bucks to miss an insert or a manual is worth it. Avoid collector's editions that don't have the game. I hate this. And like, we should have principles as game collectors to not collect not video games. Like Baldur's Gate 3. People call it like the best RPG ever made. There's a $300 quote unquote collector's edition. It doesn't have the game. It sells for like $900 on eBay now. Like, okay, I don't know if this is like a speculative flip kind of thing for you, sure, but it's not a game. It's a merch box that comes with a download code
100%.
to also get the game. So it's basically like a collectible statue, a collectible art book, a collectible soundtrack. It's not the collector's edition of Baldur's Gate 3 as far as I'm concerned.
Sure is not.
You could feel differently. I mean, I'm not the end-all be-all of what counts as a video game and video game collecting. I don't think we should support these releases because that means we will get more of these releases in the future. That is $300, and it doesn't even include the game. They could have included the game. They just wanted to make $279 of profit instead of $273 of profit. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I hate these kind of releases, and I'm not for them. I told you that's like my fear of just boxes with codes in them. I don't like that. Please stop that.
Also, top rarity lists that you find on YouTube or blog posts, everything is wrong. No one knows anything about video games, including us. Just don't listen to anyone about video games. Figure it out yourself. It is a really small hobby. Knowledge is
ringing
really
endorsement for our podcast. No one knows anything.
And this is an important point that I want to bring up. Paying market price for video games is a good thing. If you find the exact game you want in the exact condition you want, you should pay market price for it. You should plan your collecting around paying market price for the things you want. Because when the value that you get for individual items matters more than the items themselves, that's when you start hoarding junk. That's when you're like, oh, this is a $13, but this game is worth $27. I got to buy that. That's a good deal. And then you just start buying, random shit. It doesn't, even if it's like decent random shit, it's not the exact thing you want. So I always think like eBay is the best place to buy video games because you always get the market price and you always get exactly what you want. Where if you go to the game store, the thrift store, the flea market, you're just getting random stuff. I used to be really into hunting deals, especially when I was collecting like cartridge sets and it was really easy to find like random NES games at a flea market. But I almost never go to like Goodwill or flea markets anymore because I know exactly what I want.
Yep, and eBay lets you determine the condition you want to buy. Other random places, the condition is determined for you. You are limited by what's available.
All right, and let me call it out. Like, so
well.
if you, I mean, maybe this is a fun way to collect. I understand, like, some people have fun just like flipping sealed games, but like, I think your collection will be better if you do that instead of, say, like, get a deal on some lot of 75 Xbox 360 games and then post it on Reddit and say, how did I do, knowing that you got it for like 20% of the market value. I don't know, those how did I do posts, it's like, oh, look at how much money I saved on these, but then they'll go and complain about people only caring about money in the sealed game market. It just seems crazy. Reddit's crazy. I don't understand Reddit.
Reddit is, I mean, my feelings about Reddit have never changed, ever. And I've been on the Reddit is a garbage place for garbage people for a long time. Just at least in the game collecting scene. It's nope, don't go there. These are people who, it's a lot of echo chamber nonsense, and it's a place for people who like to play games and like to feel like they got a good value and show off. That's not
a
for,
little bit. I'm not going to go as far as Johnny. I think like it's the biggest collection of game collectors, so I don't think.
Nope.
I'm not going to go ahead and disparage literally every Redditor.
I will. Yeah, just did it. Just 100% did it. Look,
that's the hobby, Johnny. That's like the actual hobby is our game collecting.
That's well, and that's not the people we talk to. You're here because you're better than that. So I'm just saying, like, Reddit is fine, but these aren't serious people.
All right. Yeah. Don't gatekeep. Whether you're gatekeeping up or gatekeeping down, like, other people, whatever, if you think like they're going to lose money, or if you think they're buying something that won't have value in the future, or if you think they're buying cartridges and it's not worth the value they're worth now, like, people are having fun. Like, if someone is like literally just buying sealed twisted metals and grading them and flipping them for money, like, they could just be doing it because they think it's fun to do that. And that's the hobby for them. And it has nothing to do with the monetary value or the long-term, like, speculative future of sealed twisted metals in the PlayStation. They might just think flipping games is fun. And, like, moving around hundreds and thousands of dollars at a time is a fun thing to do. It's the same thing, like, people go to slot machines and do the same thing. It's people bet on sports games. Like, I might not do that, but I understand the appeal of just, like, throwing money around. It's a different way to experience the hobby. Manipulate the market. Screw over those Redditors. Be like, I'm going to buy out every copy of God Hand on PS2. We're going to make it a $2,000 video game. Why? No, not for the money, because I think it'll be fun.
Okay. Man, you've been...
I mean, I try to see the appeal of any action anyone takes in video game collecting, because a lot of people collect in a way that I quote unquote don't agree with. Like, it's totally not the thing I would do in game collecting, but they are doing it because it is somehow fulfilling to them. And who cares? All we're doing is we're buying mass-produced objects, and we're all buying mass-produced objects in a slightly different way. Like, who fucking cares? It is like, we're all crazy.
Yeah, we're all crazy, but some people are predators, and no one likes that.
Who is predator? Who's a predator?
Well, I don't want to get into specifics, so I'm not going to do that. But I know there are some people I would call as bad actors within, God, I hate saying the community because I feel so fucking gross, but it's the community guys. Please don't be the community guys, people. But there are some people who, well, and it's fine. What I hate are fakes and phonies. If you want to be a reseller, that's fine. Go be a reseller. It's perfectly reasonable way to make money. You know, I'm never against that. I'm never against people making money. That's never my problem. Just, it's fine. Like, it's fine to make money. It's okay. I respect that. I respect the hustle and grind mentality. If that's what brings you joy and this is your thing, that's cool. But let's just not be fake about it. That's all.
All right.
Anyways, what are you got? Any other caveats?
Else. What do you got?
Okay, so these are final notes before we go into like what your next steps are. First, just know that the research does not stop. It never stops. If you want to keep doing it, it's part of the hobby. And as I said before, the people with the best info get the best stuff. And collecting information is also fun. Knowing stuff, like if you care about the hobby and if you care about games, like Tyler and I are weirdos. We love games. We love knowing about games. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably have some of that in you too. And we just, I love collecting even if you don't collect the game, collecting info about it, just knowing stuff that existed. I find that fun. I find games to be fascinating. Another thing, find your home, be it Facebook, in one of these high-end groups, Instagram. Maybe it's a group of local people at your game store, or maybe it's a semi-popular Discord. It's important to have a place, and that isn't Reddit. Networking is important. Let me stress again, that is not Reddit.
Well, the problem with Reddit is that, like, it's not really a community in the sense that you really get to have conversations with the same people over and over and you get to know people. It's always just like, oh, whatever the new thing posted today is what we're talking about.
Reddit is dog shit. Networking is important. It's good to have people around you who also know things. Like Tyler is my friend and he's the co-host, but he's also an invaluable resources. He and I know a lot of the same stuff, but he knows a bunch of stuff I don't know. And just having him in my network of people is amazing because he knows so much. No person is an island. There's too much and there's too many games to know everything. So having people around you that you can talk to, and also like if you're a person who's collecting, maybe you're a little crazy and, so having some sort of support structure built in is nice. So build a network of people that you can talk to and hang out with and just kind of talk about games because your wife does not want to hear this shit. Your girlfriend does not want to hear it. They don't care. They're smiling and they're nodding and they're they're indulging you, and that's sweet, but have someone you can actually go talk to and then like have a real conversation about like, God, can you believe the date code on that flap? I cannot believe that they found a new date code that was earlier than all the ones that we previously thought. Your girlfriend and wife, they don't care about that. And I can't stress that enough. They like, and maybe you're like a weirdo case that does, but they don't. Your significant other is just placating you. So find some people you can, like, if you find that interesting, find someone else who actually finds that interesting so you can talk about it. I said before, be patient. We talked about FOMO, but just in general, be patient. You don't need everything now. Enjoy the process. Here's a big one. Protect your collection early. Box protectors are your friend. They're really not very expensive. They're like under $1 each. So if you're buying a $50 game and it's a $1 box protector, that's not a big deal. $51. Who cares? But when you have to go buy 500 box protectors and suddenly it's $500 instead of like just buying a lot of like 25 and having them on hand as you get new games, that shit becomes tedious and you start to see it as I could be buying a $500 game, but instead I had to buy $500 worth of box protectors. So just get those around and start that train early. Don't trust investment videos is another big one I have because there's two funny videos going on right now. There's one that's talking about how sealed games have collapsed, and then there's talking about how sealed games are going up. Like, these came out at the same time. So which is true? They're all people with investments, and they're all people with their own objectives and their own agendas. So I just don't trust them. Like, it's fine to like watch them and like kind of information and take from both sides and kind of figure out what's going on. Sure. But in general, I don't trust them. Anyone who views video games as an investment right now, I don't fully trust their information. There are a lot of good collectors, big, smart, great collectors who have games like as an investment that you could talk to, but they were collectors first. I'm talking about these people who just came in and they're like, I'm making these investment videos on. Don't trust that. Also, be careful if you're getting into this about repros. We didn't really talk about this, but repros and fakes. If the price is too good to be true, it probably is. There are fake boxes, there are fake carts, there's fake everything now. People are getting very good at making fakes. Be very careful. That's why research is important. And just be careful how much you buy and how you buy it. If you're buying stuff, have a plan, have that list, and then, do some of the basics. If you're buying stuff, protect yourself, don't overspend your money. If you're using a credit card, have the one you use for it. Make sure you're getting the best out of it. Like if you're getting reward points, if you're shopping all day on eBay, probably have the eBay credit card and then pay it off every single month, because don't treat it like a credit card. Treat it like a debit card. Don't go into credit card debt for games. My last note.
All right. I'm going into credit card debt right now for video games.
Okay. Please don't do that.
All right. Well, you don't understand. It's my investments. This is actually both my retirement account and my house down payment.
Oh God, please. There's nobody who's ever been burned by this. Please, Tyler, then let's cite how games went from $100,000 to $15,000 again.
Also, I don't know, maybe for everyone who buys like stupid shit, and that means like literally anything, video games, gold and silver, cryptocurrency. I guess maybe cryptocurrency you could find an example, but like find like a bunch of serious rich people, like who are like, I don't know, like finance business bros. Like how many of them got rich by like flipping Pokemon cards? How many people have ever got rich by like buying and selling cryptocurrency? Like a bunch of stupid people did get rich, but like
whatever
not
you
everything
say,
is
boomer.
going to be like cryptocurrency, or Bitcoin goes from like 7 cents to $60,000. It's certainly not going to happen with graded video games that already cost $2,000 each. Anyway, don't use the hobbies as a financial instrument.
No, remember, only money you can afford to throw in the garbage. All right, Tyler. We've told the people like if they're thinking about collecting. We've given a bunch of good info. We have other episodes that talk about system specific stuff, but what should they do now, Tyler, besides go listen to more episodes of the Collector's Quest podcast?
And then immediately think we're even crazier. Right. Yeah. All right. Actionable item that you just listen to this whole podcast. All right. You got to pay attention now again. Hey, I know you're cleaning your house in the background. I know maybe you're driving. Maybe don't do this if you're driving. But all right.
Walking your dog.
We got homework. No one's walking their dog for 3 hours. Make a top 10 list of the 10 games you want most. It doesn't matter what the price is. It doesn't matter just what would be the coolest 10 games in your mind to own. It could be a Sculptor's Cut loose cartridge. You're wrong, but that could be on the list. And go to eBay, social media, whatever. Research like what version of the games you want. Maybe you don't care about versions, but maybe if you just throw them all into eBay, maybe there's a more interesting version. You know what you could do? You could go on eBay, sort by highest price, because that'll usually find you the cooler versions of things. And maybe there's a version of the game you didn't even know existed. But put those games down and make those the 10 things you buy next. And I don't care if it's a $2 copy of Assassin's Creed 2 on the Xbox 360, or if it's like a PC game that costs hundreds of dollars, like Doom. But if prioritize those 10 things first, just see how prioritizing works instead of just like buying random shit that you see on eBay or, Goodwill or wherever you go. If just do it for 10 games, and I think you will agree it's the way to go. It is so good.
It's pretty good.
And if you can't afford hundreds of dollars on Rule of Rose, if Rule of Rose is your number one, you have to save up for it. Like all of your disposable income, just put it aside and wait until you can afford the Rule of Rose. And it's going to feel so much better when you knock off the number one thing on your list.
It is. I also, my philosophy is a little different. I would like those 10 games and then to know what they all cost and then to start setting money aside for all of them so I can be opportunistic while buying them if I know that I'm for sure buying those 10. But yes, I agree.
All right. That's all I got. That's your homework.
All right. And here's the very last thing. And this is the most important thing. Collect what you want. We've said a lot of things. You've seen a lot of videos, a lot of people telling you what to do and how to do it. But this is your stuff. This is how you should be enjoying it. It should be fun. It should be something that you take away and be like, man, I love doing this stuff. I love this stuff. Tyler and I love the way we do this. That's why we sit here and talk to you for 3 hours on a podcast about it. But you should do what makes you happy. You should collect how you want. And doesn't matter if guys like us who've been at it for a long time told you something. If that doesn't jive with you, then you should just go do what you want to do. We have a lot of experience. We know some stuff, but again, that doesn't mean anything. If what we said isn't fun to you, then you should not listen to us. Have fun. And that's it for the episode.
All right. John, because speaking to that, we're just like piling on at this point. I think it's way more fun to collect something that doesn't have a price graph attached to it. So like I collect a lot of Japanese PC 88 games right now. And like who knows what a PC 88 game is worth? A lot of them are just like, I don't know, like somewhere in between 20 and 60 bucks. Occasionally there's some that are more expensive than that, but like no one cares about this stuff, at least in America. And so I'm so much more relaxed buying things. I'm just like, I could let some stuff go. I could see some cool stuff and buy it because it's probably cheap because no one cares about it. But when I was collecting my NES set, I was so focused on prices and like optimizing the order in which I'm buying things and trying to find opportunistic deals. It felt higher stakes buying something that I knew that like 5,000 other people were buying the same exact thing as me. So I agree, buy what you like, even if it's something that literally no one collects, even if it's Roblox gift cards, because I think it might be more fun.
When I buy all that dumb Halloween shit, even if I'm overpaying, like it feels completely stress-free because I know 100% I'm not considering like how much it's worth, who's going to buy it, like what I have to do with it. I'm like, I'm buying this dumb shit because I love it and no one else gives a shit. This is all just for me. This is the most self-indulgent bullshit thing. And, I'm just having fun with it. It's like 100% joy and it's great.
All right. Shall we move on to Ask the Podcast, Johnny?
Yeah. Let's answer a collector's question.
Tiger Wolf asks, what movie or TV show do you wish was a video game with a physical edition? Where do you come up with these questions? And you can also pick a platform and genre for this game. So my favorite movie is There Will Be Blood, which if you haven't seen it, it's a modern day character portrait similar to Citizen Kane. It would not make a very good video game. My favorite TV show is probably Band of Brothers, but that's very Call of Duty already. I don't think that would be very interesting. So I'm going to say, Johnny, Das Boot, and it's going to be a realistic World War II submarine simulation. And I know we have some of those. I know the Silent Hunter games are great. Silent Hunter 3 is the one I played. Cool game. But I don't care. I want I'm saying this. I bet there is a Das Boot video game now that I'm saying this. I'm looking up Das Boot PC game.
There are a lot of things you don't think have games.
It came out in 1990 for Amiga and DOS.
Excellent. For DOS?
No.
DOS Boot?
All right, and of course it's a submarine simulation game. No, I want it to be like Silent Hunter style, modern era submarine simulation based on Das Boot. This game looks very close to what I want it to be. Oh my goodness.
I want a social engineering game where you have to build relationships, but it's midsummer, right? So yeah, I want a game where you have to convince people to go with you on the midsummer journey, and then you're trapped there, and then it becomes can you get out, or but also have multiplayer, so your goals are different, like kind of like Werewolf, where everyone has assigned roles. That's what I want.
Okay, I was in until you made it multiplayer, because man, all of those multiplayer horror games just turn into the same thing.
I would also like a really good, I have my list of horror movies because I always want more horror games. I would love just an actual copy. And I went through this because I'm like, man, how many horror movies got games? That's like a thing, I do. But some big ones didn't. Like The Shining never got a game. And I'm just like, I can't believe The Shining never got a game. Or It. And I would love to have It be a video game.
It was such a big movie. I can't believe they didn't make an Xbox game out of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was at the point where kind of movie franchise stuff was dead. But I'm just surprised, in the 80s it was like a TV movie, or in the 90s, was it 90s? Yeah, 90s it was TV movie, so that wasn't really what they were converting into games. So I'm surprised that one and The Shining never saw games.
Are you sure The Shining never had a game? I don't know.
Yes.
There's a lot of DOS games.
I am sure, because and if you ask around, people are like, yeah, there's a version, and there's not. And if you ask ChatGPT, it'll tell you there is, and then it is 100% wrong. Trust me, I did a lot of looking on this one.
All right. Also, follow-up question: what would the special edition include inside of it?
Ooh, it would include. The inner sleeve of it would be special. It would be a reversible cover that had the pattern of the rug for The Shining.
All right. That's
because I hate tchotchkes.
I do hate tchotchkes. I'm putting a tchotchke in mine. So World War II stuff, just random GI shit is not rare. So we're gonna buy up a bunch of old artillery shells and maybe cut them up into squares, and you get a little in a plastic case, here's an actual World War II artillery shell, which feels nice and special, but we shot millions of them at each other. So it's literally just scrap metal, but I think it would be cool. It would be oh, this murdered people in 1945. Nice.
Okay. I'm going to go for my tchotchke for The Shining would be a room key,
Mm-hmm.
So that makes sense. And for it would just include a red balloon.
That would be so stupid. I love it.
Yeah.
Just a deflated red balloon.
Yep.
Oh, that's so perfect.
Yeah, 100%. So cheap too, and what a way to make it. I wouldn't print it on it or anything like that either. It would just be a red balloon. But I would probably print something down by the base where you tie it, so it couldn't just be easily replicated, just to make it the dumbest shit ever. Yeah, I think that's it. Midsummer, just some pressed flowers.
No, I feel that is that easy to do in scale. I don't know. Maybe
I don't know. I mean, they're everywhere. Yeah,
it's the special edition.
Yeah, it's the special edition. They're only making.
That's a stupid shot. God, I hate stuff like that. I mean, whatever. I'm giving you a little encapsulated artillery shell piece.
Yeah.
But whatever, you know what? One of those has never come with a video game. That would be an interesting thing. That's those, they have those Kickstarters for oh, it's a science museum in an acrylic case, and it just comes with a bunch of little pieces of garbage. Oh, this is a little piece of uranium. Now you're a scientist because you have it. That's
cool.
That's the market I'm going for. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the Friday the 13th. Give me those blood capsules. How cool is that?
Those are pretty cool.
Yeah. All right.
Now, one more question because it's relevant. Emilio
Okay.
asks, would you recommend investing in acrylic cases for your games rather than flexible PCB ones? Or PVC ones. So I think he's saying, should you get custom box protectors or like just box protectors rather than the dollar bin regular box protectors?
I think it really depends on scale. So I think if you have like all of your best stuff and it's expensive and you have a curated collection, then like having a sweet selection of like acrylic cases for your games would look nice, especially if it's something that doesn't display particularly well, like Super Nintendo cart only. Yeah, I like some acrylic cases. I think if you were on mass like Stupid Tyler and I, then you would have to be very selective about what you put an acrylic case in, and then box protectors for the majority of it.
Yeah, I mean, a box protector costs like 75 cents, maybe like $1. And an acrylic case costs like $20 to $30. So it is a huge difference in price. If an acrylic case if a like regular box protector like PVC is available, I'm always going to do that. I do that for like my consoles. I've got a Sega CD up here. It's in like a $20 box protector. Putting an acrylic case around it would probably cost me like $80. It's not worth it to me, I don't think. I think, and like even just putting the dollar box protector on it, it makes your game look like 25% better in condition off the bat. Yep. It's an amazing magical piece of plastic. Another thing that's a little bit weird is sometimes box protectors or the acrylic ones, they actually have a worse fit than the thin cheapy box protectors. They just have like a little bit more wiggle room for the game to wiggle around in. I mean, I'm sure you could get them custom cut to be like perfectly sized, but I'm totally fine with cheapy box protectors.
If you're moving that around, what that means is that box is slamming into hard plastic rather than soft.
Yeah. Like what's happening to my games that acrylic case is going to protect it that the box protector wouldn't really? Like if I drop it, it's kind of getting jammed around either way.
Yep.
I mean, I do like sealed big box PC games. I have a few of those that I want acrylic cases because like big box PC games are all different sizes. So you just kind of have to get custom stuff for that. And I'm not grading them because it costs like $200 friggin' to grade a PC game.
And they look ridiculous because the box they come in will never fit it right. And then it's just like weirdly, displays horribly.
All right. No, they're cool. I mean, they're too big.
Like the VGA cases, which are too big and the game is just like floating in the middle of it. I hate that.
I mean, that's sure.
Hate it.
What else do we do, Johnny? What are we buying and what are we playing?
Yeah, what are we buying and what are we playing? That's the next part of the show. Hey, welcome back, Tyler.
Yeah.
Tyler, what am I playing? I played a little bit of stupid, not Baldur's Gate 3, Diablo 3 or 5. Diablo. I played Diablo.
Diablo 5, the one that came after Diablo Immortal, you mean? Diablo 5, yes.
Yeah. I'm struggling with my numbers. I just played a little bit the other day. I've been on vacation, Tyler, so I haven't really played anything aside from like about an hour of that. I did not play any games on vacation. I did not bring a Switch or anything with me because it's going to be at theme parks all day, and then I was going to be tired, and I didn't want to be like, I'm just going to play games. And what that would really mean is I would just like start a game and then pass out. So I wasn't going to do that. That's what I played. I did buy a couple things.
Oh?
Yes. Hey, have you heard of Super Mario RPG?
Oh, okay. Yes, the remake.
Yeah, I got that. But I also got, and this was a thing that made me sad that happened because I didn't realize. Do you remember when you got Harvest Moon on the Game Boy?
Didn't I buy that from like Bird Dog Gaming or someone or like Jeff the Game Boy Ferris?
Yep. So you bought it from Jeff, and I was like, I looked at that list and I passed because I thought I had Harvest Moon on the Game Boy, but what I really had was Harvest Moon on the Game Boy Color, and I had Harvest Moon. So I bought Harvest Moon 2 and 3. I was like, oh, cool. So and I did have Harvest Moon, but I just had the cart only. So someone put a box and manual on eBay, and I just happened to see it while it came through a save search. And I was like, oh man, finally, let me right this wrong. So I got the box and manual and reg card for Harvest Moon, and now life is good again, Tyler.
That's awesome. I love Harvest Moon GB. I haven't played all of them. I've played Harvest Moon GB. I don't know the difference between. There's like 4 or 5 of them. Johnny, the reason I had to buy Harvest Moon GB from Jeff is I bought it from one of those stock photo eBay sellers like Power Up Video Games, and they sent me Harvest Moon GBC. So,
yeah, cool.
I did the same thing.
Yep. So yeah, I was pretty excited that I got to correct that moment and just be like, finally, my Harvest Moon collection for portables is complete. Well, except for GBA. I still need more Friends of Mineral Town.
Go get it. Harvest Moon's cool.
I look at it all the time.
It's the original cozy game. I feel like that entire series is like so much more important in retrospective because people love just like cozy farming sims now. It's like a huge genre. And in the 90s, it was like only Harvest Moon.
Yep.
Oh, it's so cool. I still don't have a complete in-box Harvest Moon on Super Nintendo. I really, really need to get one.
Ooh, expensive.
You see, it's one of those things where like the Heritage Auction crowd just hates Harvest Moon for some reason. It usually goes underpriced on Heritage Auctions. I'm just waiting for the right one to come up.
Nice. All right. So what about you? What'd you play? What'd you buy?
Johnny, I bought a very expensive Famicom console.
Okay, go on.
Johnny, one of my favorite things in my collection is this Charimera Zelda, which is... it's a promotional copy of the original Legend of Zelda on Famicom Disk System that was given away by a ramen noodles company. And you got this, it came in like a little lunchbox, and it came with a copy of the game. The only difference on the game is there's a different sticker on the disc. That is it. And then you also got a Famicom and a Famicom Disk System with it. And the only difference on the Famicom is the front of the Famicom. It doesn't say Family Computer. It says like Charimera Ramen or something on it. So... I bought the console that came with Charimera Zelda. I've been looking for this for a very long time. And you know what? I've been looking for this for a long time because my saved search was actually incorrect. So it kind of hit one of my backup save searches. I've been looking through square button Famicoms. So the original Famicoms, the controller has rubber square buttons and they're just garbage, but it's the rarest version of the Famicom. It's the first version of the Famicom. So a lot of times sellers call it out, and they do sell for a premium. And I thought that the Charimera Famicom had to be one of these first edition Famicoms, because I was completely wrong and just out of my mind for some reason. But the Famicom Disk System did not come out when the Famicom came out. So I've been looking through hundreds and hundreds of square button Famicoms looking for this sticker, and I was looking at the entirely wrong thing.
Oh, no.
But yeah, now I've got a cool Famicom to go with my cool Famicom game, Johnny.
Now all you need is the case.
Fuck. There was one that came up on eBay of all places for like $500, and I'm like, well, I'm never gonna find the console, so why would I spend $500 on the case? And I'm looking back, I'm like, damn, I just wish I bought that case. The thing is, I think there were multiple Charimera giveaways. I think they also gave away Kid Icarus, and it came with the same case. I'm shooting from the hip now. I think the case should technically be less rare for some reason.
Okay,
but whatever. I'll find it eventually. Nothing's gone forever, Johnny. Come on,
nope,
I'll find this shit.
And something to shoot for, something to put on the list and save your pennies for.
And Johnny, playing, I am mostly making a mod for Brigand Oaxaca, and I am not a game developer, so it is very difficult and takes a very long time. Brigand Oaxaca, it's an immersive sim. You could think of it. It's similar to Deus Ex, so it's like a freeform kind of first-person shooter thing with RPG stats. I want to make a mod that tells like a 10-minute story. I want to add 10 minutes of gameplay to this game I love. And oh my God, it's going to take a long time and it's going to look like absolute garbage. And it's probably just going to be terrible. I don't know how people make 3D video games. It is super hard. This game was made in like this ancient engine with Dark Basic Pro. Shout out to anyone from 20 years ago who remembers Dark Basic Pro. But you could basically know nothing and boot up like the Unreal Engine and make something that looks fucking amazing. And in this engine, I am making individual cubes and resizing them and applying a texture to them because I can't even figure out how to import like modern model formats into this 20-year-old engine, so I can't like import my own models or anything. Everything I'm just making everything from scratch.
That sounds terrible.
And I learned something by doing this. What I learned is that if you are making all of your entire game world, all the models and everything from scratch, making textures for shit is like really hard. It's impossible to make anything look good if you're manually texturing each individual surface of your game, and like you're not like dedicating, hours and dozens of hours to art. And I realized that like, oh my God, Cruelty Squad is one of my favorite games ever. And that was also some guy making his first video game following an FPS tutorial. And that game looks amazing. It was made by an artist, but all the textures are just like crazy wild textures. And I bet the game looks like that because that guy was making a video game and he's like, man, making textures fucking sucks. Let's just put like whatever on here and have it be crazy. Because God, making textures sucks. I know there's like 3 people listening who are in the game dev industry. Like, yeah, you thought making a game was easy. Yeah, it fucking sucks. It takes forever. And this experience will make me appreciate games even more.
You did it, Tyler.
Oh my goodness. Making games sucks. I can't believe anyone would ever spend their life doing this.
Yeah, that sounds awful.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it'll be fun. I don't know. Maybe I'll get, because I made this, I'm hoping I can get some of my friends to buy Brigand Oaxaca, a game that costs $8. But I love it. All
okay.
Right.
I'll buy it.
Thanks, Johnny.
No, I'll support
just so you can play my mod.
Yes. Oh, we did it. Hey, Tyler, for those of you who don't know, where can we find you on social media?
I'm on the Discord, Johnny. I'm Default Gen on Discord.
Oh.
I'm in our Discord, in fact.
Yeah. So the only way to actually get to that Discord is to join us via Patreon. If you want to do that, you can do it for as little as $2, and that will get you access to the Discord, or $4 will get you access to the bonus content, which we do on average, I don't know, like once a month. We do some nonsense stuff that may or may not be related to games. But that's it. And that's at patreon.com/collectorsquest. If you feel like it, if not, you get the same old show, and that's totally fine and no worries. All right, Tyler, you can find me on Instagram at Johnny_Iucci, sometimes on TikTok when I'm posting my dumbass Halloween videos, and sometimes on YouTube when I'm doing that, and it's all Johnny Iucci. So actually, I think TikTok, I'm under the Collector's Quest podcast. I whatever, I'm not serious on TikTok. If you really want to find me, come on our Discord or shoot me a message on IG. That's it. All right, that's the show, guys.
You could just send me a message on Discord. Like, I'm just Default Gen. Just you don't have to pay me $2 to send me a message. Also, that's Johnny, speaking of like my being absent from most social media, I'm having a conversation with one of my friends right now over email, like regular email. I'm talking to one of my Apple II collector friends because I'm just not on social media. They're just like, all right, email. It's 1985 again.
Or you could just be a fucking real person and have a phone where you text. Just text people, Tyler.
Yeah, then Verizon's going to have all my text messages. They're going to know what Apple II games I'm looking for.
Fine. Then get an iPhone where they protect it.
Apple holds the encryption keys to that, Johnny.
They've already not knelt under pressure to the FBI. I'm just saying.
I know Apple's pretty good at private. I'm not going to knock Apple, but I'll knock all big tech companies. But yeah, if you're going to pick one, go with Apple. Definitely not fucking Google.
All right. So yeah, let's just have text message conversations. Didn't you invite him to join you on the Matrix yet?
No, I had no one. Stop it.
You stop it. You're the only reason I have to talk about it.
You can hit me up on Matrix. I'm Tyler Public at matrix.org. Everyone's talking to me on Matrix.
Anyways, that's it for the show today. Thanks so much for listening. Hope you learned something, or I hope I just reaffirmed everything you already know. Anyways, that's it. Thanks. Bye.